Give us a second. Okay, looks like we're streaming. So that all looks good.
Well, good evening. I guess I'm ready to go. Welcome to Candidates Night for 2020. Coming at you via Zoom, which a lot of us are getting very used to. I'm Kevin Freeman. I'm a volunteer with the Scarborough Community Chamber of Commerce and also a member of the SEDCO board. I am joined by Art Dillon, from the Scarborough Community Chamber of Commerce, and behind the question up there is Nancy Kroll of the Scarborough Public Library and the Scarborough Chamber of Commerce. We will be looking at the various candidates running for office this year in Scarborough. And during the evening, if you have questions that you'd like to ask, you can submit your questions on Monday the 28th to sccquestions@gmail.com, or you can go to the Scarborough Chamber of Commerce Facebook page and submit questions via Messenger. And Art will be getting those to me through my laptop, which is to my immediate left here in the broadcast studios off of Broad Turn Road, west of the Turnpike, is where I'm coming to you tonight. And to my right or to my left is Benjamin McDougall, who is running for the Sanitary District Trustees. We have 3 candidates running for the trustees this year. 2 are seeking re-election. Jason Greenleaf of Clay Pits Road and Ruth Summers of Burnham Road are both seeking additional terms on the trustees. Jason and Ruth are unable to join us tonight due to work commitments, but Ben McDougall is able to join us. And Ben is running for the first time. He lives over on Partridge Lane, and he is running for the seat formerly held by Judith Cavallero. And I understand you're a Yukon Huskies fan, Ben.
I am.
I understand you went to school and got a degree in environmental sciences, and that you're the code enforcement officer for the town of Cape Elizabeth.
That's right.
And Ben, if you'd like to let us know why you're running, and welcome to Candidates Night.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'm running because Nick Rico lives in my neighborhood, and he's a longtime member of the board, and he's talked about his responsibilities on the board and what he does and how he thinks I could be a good asset to the board. And I think it's a great experience. The board, I've attended a couple of their meetings, and it's a really impressive board, very knowledgeable. I look forward to learning a lot from them. And I've toured the sanitary district, and it's a very impressive facility, and just seems like a great opportunity for me to serve the community.
So your background working in municipal services with the town of Cape Elizabeth, how does that help you in this position that you're seeking?
As a code enforcement officer and a plumbing inspector, I have experience in wastewater, calculating wastewater flow and what happens in different situations with both commercial and residential development. And I was also code enforcement officer for 5 years in the town of York prior to 8 years with Cape Elizabeth. And before that, I was an environmental consultant, and I designed septic systems. And so I do have some experience with the private side of septic systems, so some general concepts. So I think I have a good general background to be an asset on the board, along with my degree in environmental science.
I would say so too. What are you expecting to be your major goals, your main goals as a member of the trustees?
At this point, it's just to sit on the board and learn from everyone else and figure out what my role is going to be on the board. It seems like a very well run operation at this point, so I'm not stepping on the board with any specific goals in mind, except to observe what's happening and confirm that everything's being run really well and continue that into the future.
And Ben, the capital investments that have been made over the last few years, given the amount of expansion that we've seen in Scarborough and development, is the capacity of the system, as you understand it, coming in, good for a number of years?
Absolutely. There's my understanding is we're only at about 60% capacity right now. Maybe that number might be off a little bit, but I was talking to Dave about capacity, and that is obviously a concern with the way Scarborough's growing, and but there is adequate capacity at this point, and the board is always open to adding additional capacity if necessary.
Well, we thank you very much for coming forward tonight and joining us. Again, this is Ben McDougall. Ben is running for a seat on the Scarborough Sanitary District Board of Trustees. He is one of three running for 3 open seats. Jason Greenleaf and Ruth Summers are seeking re-election, and Ben would come on to take the seat formerly held by Judith Cavallero. Ben, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and good luck, and I look forward to meeting you in person sometime.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you to the Chamber and everyone else that helped put this on. This is a really nice thing to do.
Thank you. Ben McDougall for running for the Sanitary District Board of Trustees. We're going to prepare for the Board of Education, which will be coming up here imminently. And I will put myself on, I'll just keep talking. And Ben, I think Karen will be moving you off, and we'll be bringing on the Board of Education candidates, 3 candidates running for 2 seats. The 2020 elections and why we're doing it tonight, and we do understand we are broadcasting on September 28th, and that is the Jewish feast of Yom Kippur. And we were looking at a number of different dates and availability, and also this year, just the necessity in our view to get our program done before the early voting and the absentee voting period begins, and that does begin next Monday. And just looking at, like with the presidential debate tomorrow night, we felt like we had to avoid that, and so we selected tonight. But we do want to recognize the fact that we were coming on just prior to sunset of a very holy day, and if we have offended anyone, we certainly apologize for it. It was not our intention when we originally scheduled the evening. Early voting, as I said, for the November 3rd election will start next week. October 5th is when it's scheduled, and it'll run through the month of October. As you know, Scarborough has had an incredible turnout for absentee ballot requests, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 plus at this time. Of course, it's going on everywhere, and that was another reason why we wanted to get this program out, so you could meet all the local candidates before you cast your ballots. And there are a host of races running from, Susan Collins' seat with Sarah Gideon and Max Lynn and Lisa Savage running. The Congressional District 1 with Shelley Pingree, the incumbent, running against Republican Jay Allen. The Maine Senate District 30, formerly held by, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought, but Stacey Brenner, Linda Sanborn, excuse me. Stacey Brenner is running as a Democrat for the Senate District 30 against Sarah Rivard, the Republican candidate. Maine Senate District 29, which touches a little bit of Scarborough. Rebecca Millett is running again, Democrat is running against Republican Tim Thompson. And we have three local races for House District 27, which is out right on the Gorham area. Kyle Bailey, a Democrat, is seeking re-election, running against Roger Densmore, a Republican. House District 28 is Chris Cayazzo, a Democrat, is running unopposed. And House District 29, Sean Babine, the incumbent Democrat, is running against Annalee Rosenblatt, the Republican, and independent Sophia Warren. Again, you can submit questions, sccquestions@gmail.com. And at this time, I will welcome our Board of Education candidates, who you can see on the screen. And if you'll bear with me. We have
John, do you have your video off?
I, let's see. Can you hear me at least?
Yes, we can hear you okay, but we just can't see.
Okay, good. Can you see me now? Yes, you can. And I've got the light problem here.
Thank you.
Well, welcome all three candidates. Our candidates running for the Board of Education, 2 seats. Our candidates are John David Dittmer of Woodside Drive, Leanne Cazelonis of Orchard Street, seeking re-election, and Mary Shannon Lindstrom of Jasper Street are all running. Welcome, and nice to see you all. And I will first say John Dittmer is joining us once again. John is married with 2 daughters. He is a Bachelor of Arts in History from Eartham College, and he has a Juris Doctorate from the University of Maine School of Law. And he is a medical practice manager. He has been a member of the Scarborough Education Foundation, a former vice president, Scarborough Volleyball Boosters, and a member of the Wentworth Building Committee. And John also joined us a couple the last year, I believe it was last year, John, you ran previously for the Board of Education. Leanne Cazelonis is currently a member of the Board of Education, and she lives on Orchard Street. She with her son, who's in the Scarborough school system, as are John's kids. Leanne has a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics from the University of Southern Maine, and she works in business as a business systems analyst at WEX. As I said, she is a member of the Board of Education. She has been the chair since 2018. She is a member of the Board of Directors of the Apex Youth Connections, formerly the Community Bicycle Center, where she served as president from 2015 to 2017. That's a long commitment, Leanne. And committee chairwoman for Troop 47, the Boy Scouts of America, from 2015 to 2018. Welcome, Leanne. And Mary Shannon Lindstrom from Jasper Street is married with 1 son and 3 stepsons. Her background is Bachelor of Science in Health Services Administration from the University of Central Florida in Orlando. And she has a Master of Science in Public Policy from George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. And Mary Shannon is self-employed, president of MSL Financial Counseling, offering leadership and developmental training, financial counseling, and financial education services for credit unions and credit leagues. And she has been president of the Sea Ridge Homeowners Association from 2019 to now. She's a past vice president in 2018-19. She is also a member of the Greenfield Farm Homeowners Association for 5 years. She was a communications officer for Northwest Federal Credit Union Foundation from 2008 to 2013, responsible for school partnerships and education scholarships. Welcome, Mary Shannon, Leanne, and John Dittmer. And John, are you coming back with us? All right. We will, I'll go to Leanne Castellanos to begin with. Leanne, why don't you tell us in a minute to 2 minutes why you're running, and welcome to Candidates Night.
Thank you. And big thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event tonight. For those who don't know me, I'm Leanne Castellanos, and I'm seeking a second term as a member of the Board of Education. I ran for the first time in 2017 as it was personally the right moment to step up in a capacity that was meaningful to the town. I began advocating for stronger educational programming with the Boston Public Schools, where I was a tutor for inner city children, focused on those students 3 or more years behind their grade level. I quickly became a child advocate, speaking on behalf of those who did not have a voice of their own in the system. After my son became more independent, I continued this work in Biddeford with the Community Bicycle Center, now Apex Youth Connections, first as a mentor, training for and riding in the truck across Maine with disadvantaged youth. Their stories, and more importantly, their perseverance to improve themselves with education, inspired me to join their board of directors and then to serve as their board president for 2 years. When I joined the school board, I never expected how many unique events could occur in a 3-year period, but they happened, and I have learned from each and every one. I've experienced more in my first term than many members around the state have in their decades of service to the schools. Each time an event passes, this board gets stronger, and I'm even more committed to working collaboratively, proactively listening to all sides of the issue before taking any actions. I've been asked why, in the midst of a pandemic, I'm running again, and it was my son who was instrumental in my seeking a second term. He reminded me I've always volunteered my time to organizations supporting youth initiatives for as long as he can remember. More importantly, since he will be in college next year, he wants me to stay busy and connected to the Scarborough Public Schools. Secretly, I think he really wants me to have the chance to hand him that diploma at graduation. And I agree with him. There's no organization I'd rather serve at this time than our public schools. And while I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, the 3 years of experience I have, the contacts I have made and can rely upon for sound advice, along with a deep understanding of the role of the board within the district, is vital to providing continuity after the election and completing the work already underway. I hope my answers and the message you hear tonight resonates, and I earn your support at the polls. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne Castellanos. And I'll go to Mary Shannon Lindstrom for your opening statement. And welcome, Mary Shannon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Good evening, and thank you to the Chamber for giving us the opportunity to introduce ourselves and share our ideas tonight. My name is Mary Shannon Lindstrom, and I am running for the Scarborough School Board, as you know. My interest in public education was had a little bit of a different start. I actually interned while getting my master's degree at the National Jumpstart Coalition for Personal Financial Literacy. And that is a nonprofit that's dedicated to preparing our nation's youth for lifelong financial success. But while I was there, I spent my time learning about the lack of financial education curriculum in the schools across our nation, nationwide, and how that impacted the youth, what impact that left on the children as they grew to be adults. My experience there really instilled a love of advocacy and led me to a career going forward where I was able to use that. But it really left an understanding to me that there is no greater tool in our children's tool belt than the education we provide them. So from this internship, I developed my career in the credit union movement. You heard about my work with the foundation, and one of my roles was really managing our partner schools. So we had schools at the elementary, the middle, and the high school levels. But throughout this partnership, I could really see the importance of a budget and how, when a budget is incredibly tight, the difficult decisions that must be made, and how the needs that arise when that happens. So one story that I'll share with you that I've never forgotten is we had a principal at our partner school write us asking us for a box of copy paper because they had already used their allotted amount, their budgeted amount for the year, and they had no way to make copies for the remainder of the year. So it just made me realize in that moment we could always do better. I moved to Scarborough 4 years ago, and I have really spent my time doing a lot of watching and listening on the sidelines so that I could understand all sides of our community and the different points and counterpoints being made. With this last budget cycle we went through, I really tapped into my advocacy past and worked to advocate for the successful passage of our budget. I really believe strongly in civic duty and responsibility. And this time that I have right now is the time for me to give back to the town that I've loved for the last 4 years. I think our kids deserve it, our teachers deserve it, and our staff deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Shannon. And Mary Shannon, is that how I should be addressing you?
That is absolutely fine. I go by my middle name, Shannon, but
Shannon, okay.
Mary Shannon's my legal name, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. John David Dittmer.
Hello.
Welcome, and you have 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you. I apologize. I had to switch over to my iPhone to make this all work, but if you can hear me and see me, then I think we're okay. I am John David Dittmer. Most people know me as Dave, but on the ballots, the 2018, I ran for town council, and that's where a lot of people know me as John Dittmer. Now I'm running for school board in Scarborough. I've been a Scarborough resident for 14 years, and I have a wife and 2 daughters. I've also been a business owner in Scarborough for 12 years. I have managed and co-owned that business. I've been very active with community organizations, and as you said, Wentworth Building Committee, Volleyball Boosters, Gym Dandies, Education Foundation. I spend a lot of time with these groups because they have made this town go round. The volunteers in town have made a huge difference. Scarborough's a rapidly growing community, and our population and property values have increased in a large part because of the reputation and quality of our schools. In conversations I've had with local real estate professionals, they cite schools as the primary reason families move to Scarborough. Strong academics, variety and depth of sports and other extracurricular activities, and especially support for populations with special needs are contributing factors. I really believe that our schools are our core. And in recent years, we've had some tax squabbles, resulting in cutting of programs and teachers that have kind of tarnished our reputation, both locally and beyond. And I believe now is the time we draw a line in the sand and say, enough cutting, it's time to invest. So why should you ask me to do that? Well, I have an extensive experience in business management. I've worked with town committees and governments, and I do have strong opinions, but I also like to look beyond my own beliefs and ideas to listen to others and find common ground and find viewpoints that are shared, because when you find shared viewpoints, you often find solutions to problems that have been intractable in the past. As a school board member, my goal is to help guide our community back to a place where education is highly valued and important. And I am running for school board because I want to help restore that reputation of quality in our schools, and because I believe they are the best investment we can make in our town.
Thank you, John David Dittmer, and again, welcome to Candidates Night. We've had a few questions that have come in advance. I'm gonna go to Leanne for our first question, followed by Mary Shannon, and then John David, and then we will rotate from there. The biggest thing that the Scarborough School Department is facing is currently going on, and that's the response to the COVID pandemic. And the way the question is, how will you maintain the level of learning in the curriculum as you go through this very trying time? And Leanne, if you could answer first.
Sure. First, I want to give huge kudos to the staff who spent an inordinate amount of time this summer preparing to open the doors in September. They worked through how the learning models would be, how they were going to manage both students in the buildings, at home, and those students who were fully remote. The way that we have done this is we have split so that those students who we consider to be hybrid models, so 2 days in the building, 2 days at home, they're spending time with staff members and their own classmates at the same time. They're learning from grades 6 to 12 synchronously. So if they're in classes from 8 till 2 o'clock, they're in classes from 8 till 2 o'clock with their peers. So they're staying on track, and we're going through that whole cycle. For the students, the younger ones, being on the computer for that length of time is too much. And we recognize that. So they're having some synchronous classes, some asynchronous time. They have opportunities to work with staff members online and then offline again in order to stay on task. And I just am really proud of the work that all of our teachers have done. All the staff members are working collaboratively, coming up with creative ways to make sure that the students are getting that education and are staying on track. Because again, we can hope that this is going to end quickly, or it could go on. And I believe that we're in a really great place to ensure that our students stay on track with their education.
Thank you. I have a child who's a junior in high school, and so I'm viewing it a little differently as my daughter is older. Mary Shannon, how do we get through this, and how do we maintain the curriculum during these trying times of the COVID pandemic?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's important to remember, first off, this is not just a teacher issue or a staff issue or a parent issue. This is our whole community issue. So we have to work on this together. And I don't think that we can see a greater example of that than to look at the START task force that worked this summer. We had 90 volunteers working together from different specialties to make sure that our school reopening was done in a safe, smart, effective manner. And I think that's what we got. I know everybody, this is a hard time. It's the unknown. We don't know what to expect in the future. We're kind of going through this blindly because it's our first time ever experiencing anything to this magnitude. But just like Leanne said, you have to commend the teachers for really working hard to get themselves ready for school this year. The synchronous learning that's going on. My child is in high school here. I have been very impressed when I poke my head in and see what's going on. The amount of learning that's actually taking place. I know some of us worry, are our kids actually getting a good quality education right now? And it appears that they are. The teachers have worked hard to make sure that this is an enrichment time and not just a fluff time or a time where we're not going to learn as much. So I think we are posed and in a good spot for if we have to pull the reins and we have to go fully remote because of something that occurs in the future. I think we're in a good spot to do that. But I also think we have to remember it's also up to the households. We have to be diligent in doing our daily screenings before we send our kids to school. We have to do our part to protect the teachers and the kids that are in the school during their days so that we can hopefully continue to work through this and hopefully soon be able to go back to school. That would be the great future, so we can go back to school full time.
Thank you, Mary Shannon Lindstrom. John David Dittmer, how do we cope with this pandemic, and what can you do as a board member to keep curriculum levels high?
Well, I think that I'm going to flip the switch a little bit on this, because I have a senior and a freshman at the high school, and I see tremendous opportunities from the teaching methods that are being developed and being implemented on the fly. There's been a lot of preparation, but there's still changes. But I'm seeing my daughters getting high quality education in an entirely new way, ways that we would not have even considered 6 months ago, and that were battled over 2 years ago about things like late start. This is a great opportunity to kind of revisit that, the question that we've asked in the past, and say, what is working here? Because for my children, it is working. I realize that for kids who are much younger, this is more of a struggle. And I can't speak to that because I don't live with that every day, as a lot of parents do. And I have a tremendous amount of empathy for people who have young kids right now, and trying to deal with the day-to-days and being flexible and being attentive and helping out when you can, when there's a very real possibility that you're going to have to close up and go fully remote at some point in the next few months. But as we do that, we can learn from what we're doing and really begin to see what the future of our education is going to look like, and maybe value what we have here, and especially value the teachers who are putting it into action.
Thank you, John David Dittmer. I must admit, it's night and day from spring semester to what this remote learning is doing this fall, and kudos to the staff and leadership. But leadership is one of the questions that has been caused a lot of debate 2 years ago, and is one that is really out there. And Mary Shannon Lindstrom, the question has come in about how will you approach the future leadership of the Scarborough school system as a board member?
Well, first off, I feel with any decision-making process, I certainly never assume to be the smartest person in the room, and I am a big collaborator. I enjoy working on teams where we each bring something different to the table, different perspectives, different experiences, different education, so that we work together and we use all of our strengths collaboratively to come up with the best answers, the best results. My view on leadership is that we are, our job is really to set the vision and the mission for the leaders, and then we allow the leaders to take the reins and to manage the day-to-day activities and aspects of that vision and mission. So that's what I really envision. I think that again, right now we are, times are strange, we're in tough times. I do think our leadership team should be commended for the work that has gone through with getting our schools up and running and ready to go. But going forward, I think it's highly important that we remember as a school board member what our role is. And our role really is to set that direction versus be involved in the day-to-day activities.
Thank you very much, Mary Shannon Lindstrom. John David Dittmer, leadership within the Scarborough School Department, now and in the future. How would you view your role in helping shape that as a member of the Board of Education?
Well, I would agree with Mary Shannon that it is the job to set the vision. That's school board's job, but there is also implementation. There really has to be a second step. As you went back to 2 years ago, there was a great deal of divisiveness in the town over leadership, basically a leadership struggle. And we ended up losing on both ends. I think we need to learn from those mistakes. And we really need to reach out again and see what our vision is, and then bring leaders who will see that vision. And it may be a short term, it may be a long term, but I believe our vision is clouded right now of where we're going in Scarborough. Obviously, COVID has a lot to do with that because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone the end of the year or next year. But I think we need to be prepared to really change where we are headed, because in the past few years we have not been leaders in terms of getting a budget going. We have been passive and letting the budget be set by people who are not involved with the schools. And I think that's a job of leadership within the school board, to step up and make those tough choices and tough calls and then defend them. Thank you.
Thank you, John David Dittmer. Leanne Castellanos, you've been there right in the middle of it all. And how would you address current and future leadership as how you help shape it as a member of the Board of Education?
I think Shannon set the tone with her answer. We really do set the policies, and it's those policies that guide the direction of the district. It is really important that we understand that we don't run the schools, that we make sure that we've got the right people in the right places to run them. Right now, we are very lucky to have somebody with lots of experience in our superintendent. I think Sandy has done a fantastic job in making sure that things are calm and we are approaching everything very rationally and looking at all of the pieces. Diane stepped in, taking over from Joanne Sizemore after a lot of years of Joanne in this district, and didn't miss a beat. In watching other districts, and that's something I've been really careful with, looking at where are they in their preparation. And we were prepared. We are on target. We are opened up. All of our students have Chromebooks. We're light years ahead. And that is because we've got really good leadership who's working very well together. They're collaborating. And I think that the board has helped make sure that we've allowed them to do their jobs. And that's probably the most important part of where we are, is making sure that we have the right people in the right places.
Thank you, Leanne Castellanos. We are in the Board of Education segment of Candidates Night for 2020. If you have questions, you can forward them to sccquestions@gmail.com. And Art Dillon up there in the upper right corner will forward those to me, and I'll get them on the air. And we are joined tonight by 3 candidates for the Board of Education. Leanne Castellanos, the current chairwoman, is seeking re-election, along with Mary Shannon Lindstrom and John David Dittmer. There are 2 seats open on the Scarborough Board of Education. You'll be voting on on November 3rd for 2 of these 3 candidates. John David Dittmer, I've got a question that has come in, and you will lead. What policy changes might reduce the incidence and impact of racism on students of color within our school system?
Great question. I think the best policies I've seen recently have been student-led. A petition went around, I believe the end of last year, by students who were really calling attention to the issues of racism that were affecting students, not only in Scarborough, but everywhere. That's a great lead to start with. Equality is extremely important to me. I come from a background where it is paramount. Race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, all of those things need to be considered. We need to call out racism where it is and stop it. A few years ago, there was an incident at the Scarborough soccer team. Some of the fans were chanting, "Go back to Africa," to a team that had many African players on it, immigrants. That is no longer the case in Scarborough, because there's a growing immigrant population in Scarborough. So we're not seeing that overt racism, but it's still there in our daily behaviors. I think we need to have a gentle but firm hand to let people know that just saying something is racist doesn't mean that you've done something bad. It may mean that you've done something that you don't even know you've done. Right now, there's an issue with the removal of the Scarborough mascot from the gym, and I have seen some talk about, is it okay to continue to sell mascot merchandise like that as a way of showing protest? My answer is no. No, you have to draw a line there, because we have answered as a community that this is not an acceptable image. And if you are brandishing that image, then you are continuing with the problem. So in terms of policy, I think guiding people to understand that it is an issue. And then if they continue to ignore that guidance, to be firmer and to make it clear that it is not acceptable.
Thank you, John David Dittmer. Again, it was an audience question that came in on our email, and it is, what policy changes might reduce the incidence and impact of racism on students of color in our schools? Leanne Cazelonis?
Thank you. There's been a lot of work that has gone around with those policies. We have been reviewing what we refer to as the JIC policy. It is the foundation of all of our harassment, specifically with bullying. And that is the foundation for our student handbooks. It's for how our students are able to work with each other. It provides all of the guidelines for what happens at each infraction of students and their behavior. John did mention, Dave mentioned the incident with the Indian mascot in Plummer Gym. And I commend our students for coming forward. They identified an issue. They rallied around making sure that we heard them, that they weren't comfortable with this, and the board took action. I do want to take it even a step further, that we're hoping on this Thursday night, if it's not this Thursday, it'll be the next meeting, where we'll be addressing sexual harassment policies as well. And that was where I was alluding earlier, that the policies are what set the foundation for everything that happens with the Board of Ed. And having those strong policies ensure that we have strong reactions to these situations.
Thank you, Leanne. Mary Shannon Lindstrom, again, the question of how do we, what policy changes could reduce the incidence and impact of racism on students of color in our schools?
Thank you. And I do agree that policy is, when we put it in black and white, it sets a tone that this is not acceptable in our town, period. And if we can do that, if we can work on the policies we have in existence, make sure that they are laid out in the handbook, the student handbook, and that the students are held accountable, it's going to change a lot of the perspective. I think the piece to remember, and it goes back with the messaging that John David mentioned and Leanne mentioned, we have to remember the empathy piece when we talk about issues surrounding racism and making sure that everybody feels included, because if it offends somebody, that means it's not right. And I think we sometimes lose sight of that when we talk about can we sell merchandise, or can we buy merchandise, or can we wear it? I think we lose sight of that empathetic piece. And it doesn't mean that it was wrong before, it just means we're moving forward as we grow and as we develop. I think education is a big piece that comes into play here. I think our children are fortunate now that are coming up in the sense that they are more open, and they don't tolerate as much in the way of bullying, racism and bullying, but we still have some steps to take. We still have some education that we can provide our kids that would help them understand that this is never, never tolerable. But I think it starts at the top. I think we have to have strong policies in place. I believe those policies will set what our standards are, and then we can't shy away from it. If it happens, it has to be spoken about, it has to be called out, and it has to be addressed immediately.
Thank you, Mary Shannon Lindstrom. We've got another question from our audience, and I will direct this to Leanne, followed by Mary Shannon, and then John David. Leanne, as a board member, you may be called on to represent the district in contract negotiations with one of the collective bargaining units. How would you balance the needs of the district with proposals from union representatives?
That's a great question. That's really fundamental to everything that we do. We do need to balance the needs of what is best for our district with what is best for the community. In looking at, the past contract negotiation, we did take some heat as a board with the raises that were in there, but we felt very strongly that we needed to endorse and recognize the great work of our staff. They needed to come up to at least a midpoint in their pay. We needed to make sure that we were retaining the best possible employees for the district. And that's really part of how you start balancing that out, making sure that we're ensuring continuity within our educational system, while we're also looking at how it best benefits the town. What I would hate to do is to ignore one side over the other, because it is a symbiotic relationship. We're strong as a town because we have a strong school system.
Thank you, Leanne Cazelonis. Mary Shannon Lindstrom, as a board member, you may be called on to represent the district in contract negotiations with one of the collective bargaining units. How would you balance the needs of the district with proposals from union representatives?
I agree that this is a collaborative relationship, and it's one where you have to consider both sides for sure. What I will say, though, is in this last, doing my research on the last contract negotiations, if you look at how our teachers and our staff were paid, it was below similar sized schools within our district, and in some cases fairly well below. And I don't want us to get in a position where every time a job is open in another community or a town nearby, we're losing our teachers and staff because they can move somewhere else and make more money, sometimes in the thousands more money. So that translates to quite a lot of dollars in a family's budget. So we have to be able to consider both sides and weigh both sides, but understand we want to be an employer here. I believe we want to be an employer of Scarborough where our teachers want to work for us and want to stay for us. I call it an employer of choice. And part of that is listening to what their wants and their needs are through their union. And it's something that I understand both sides of the argument and both sides of the coin here, but we really need to make sure we are maintaining and retaining the staff and the talent who are teachers that we want, and not giving them the opportunity that when something else opens next door, they're immediately leaving us for something that's better on the other side.
Thank you, Mary Shannon Lindstrom. John David Dittmer, the question of how would you, let me look at it again so I can read it exactly how it was posed. As a board member, you may be called on to represent the district in contract negotiations with one of the collective bargaining units. How would you balance the needs of the district with proposals from union representatives?
Well, first of all, it is the union's job to advocate for its employees, and I completely understand that. I really appreciate Mary Shannon's points on how there is a gap now between Scarborough teachers and staff and other communities in the area. I think that's not a short-term problem. That's a long-term problem that's been developing over the last probably 6 to 8 years. And so we need to prepare to begin to fill that gap. Now, I'm not saying we need to just give everything that the union wants, but we need to make the teachers feel supported when we're in negotiations and listening and measuring and using those matrices. We have been slowly whittling away at our education budgets over the past few years, and the union is doing everything they can for their teachers. I believe one of the issues we've had, often in the town council budget than the school board budget, is a belief that the teachers are more like almost babysitters. And I'm offended by that. I really think that right now the teachers being viewed as frontline employees in a crisis, along with the staff and the nutritionists, the transportation. That's absolutely correct. And we need to begin to make up the difference between what was happening before and what will be happening in the future. There's a new contract, so that will go for, I'm not exactly sure the terms of the contract, but when the next one comes, we need to be ready to support the teachers and staff and defend the increases that will come, because increases always come. Our life is not static, things get more expensive. And so we need to prepare ourselves and budget ourselves to be ready to do that.
Thank you, John David Dittmer. I'm going to go to Mary Shannon Lindstrom to begin the next question. Prior to the the pandemic and the shutdown, there was a lot of energy in Scarborough towards a new consolidated primary school. What are your thoughts on that, and how can how can we bring a K through 2 consolidated primary school to Scarborough?
Thank you. I'm actually a proponent of the consolidated school for many reasons. I know I only have 2 minutes, so I'm going to try to sum it up as quick as I can. I think that when you have 3 primary schools that are as old as ours, you're already behind the ball, tax dollar wise. So if we keep those schools, the amount of money we have to put in to bring them up to the current standards is, in my view, not a good use of our dollars. What is a better use of our dollars is if we can funnel that money into a new consolidated schools that's better able to meet our needs. So not just the safety concerns, which are considerable, but also our enrollment concerns, our ability to create classrooms that will hold us in the future. We have enrollment numbers projected far out. We are relying very heavily on portable classrooms. And those are, in my opinion, those are Band-Aids. Those are temporary fixes. We need a more long-term solution. That consolidated school where we can build to suit our needs is that solution.
Thank you, Mary Shannon Lindstrom. John David Dittmer, the question is about the new consolidated primary school planning. Your thoughts on it?
I agree with Mary Shannon that the school is going to be vital to Scarborough's success in schools in the future. And the costs that running 3 schools, 3 outdated schools with portables and increasing portables is getting larger. I think we also need to get more community buy-in. I was on the Wentworth towards one of the last years of the Wentworth Building Committee. And that was an entirely community-based organization that decided to build a school because we needed it. And they put forth the proposal, they got support of the community, and it went out to bond as opposed to going through the regular channels, which Scarborough almost never qualified for getting a school, especially one for the right size, because we could only get schools that were based on current enrollment rather than future enrollment, which is obviously what Scarborough has to deal with. I really think that we should look very closely at a new school. And I think we should begin to get committees going, like the Wentworth Building Committee, to advocate for those schools and begin to do an analysis of what we want in a school. The Wentworth Building Committee was an amazing thing because people who had no idea anything about construction were looking into everything from what type of roof to do, what type of floors, to what kind of energy to use. And by the end, the heat exchanger became a go, no-go piece for the entire thing, the entire project. And the committee stood by it and said, we want the heat exchange. And they got it because they got community buy-in.
Thank you, John David Dittmer. Leanne Castellanos, the new primary, consolidated primary school, your thoughts?
Well, the board had spent a lot of time talking about this. And as a matter of fact, the building steering committee came to us and we approved their recommendation to move forward with a consolidated school on January 2nd. They spent countless hours going through everything from the age of the building to the building envelope size. How could we possibly refurbish those buildings, and could we? And found that it was going to be twice as much to try to recreate on those footprints. And the most economical way to do this was by building a consolidated building. I think the most important thing we can do with respect to community buy-in is to start talking more to the community about how the buildings are now. They're over 50 years old. The programming space is so far below, in some cases more than 50% below what DOE standards are. So we're already behind where we should be with our students. Making sure that we're looking at the safety measures that need to go in play, start working through more processes. We did get stuck due to COVID. It is not an excuse, it is what it is. But when we went remote, we needed to stop the process. We couldn't continue to move forward, and we could not bring in those additional building committees that would look at designs and how to get to ballot. It got stuck. So we are working on that. Had money in the budget to move forward with hiring a consultant to help us get to the land purchase and be prepared to go to ballot. And unfortunately, due to all the cuts that came into play, we did lose quite a bit of that funding. And so we saved for some more. So that is coming. I think communication is probably our #1 priority to make sure that everyone understands the importance behind why that consolidated building is necessary.
Thank you, Leanne. John David Dittmer, we've got time for, I think, for one more question. We may be able to squeeze two. John David Dittmer, do you think it's appropriate for the Board of Education to agree to a budget or tax rate increase target with the town council at the start of the budget process before needs are even clear?
No. I don't know much more I can add to that. No, I think you have to start with the stakeholders, the teachers who are proposing, we'll have to look at all the factors that are in the budget, what needs to be replaced, facilities, contracts, everything needs to be looked at, and then make a reasonable budget. There should not be a cap ever on a budget before anyone has looked at what is needed. What we need to do as a community is to begin to realize that if you want to invest in your community and your schools, you will get returns. And we've been treating the schools like a burden, but the schools are not a burden to us. They are our greatest asset. And so I would wholeheartedly disagree with any cap ever put and any agreement ever made with the town council on a cap on how much we can spend.
Thank you, John David Dittmer. Leanne Cazelonis, and there are a number of questions that have come in around the budget. The one I chose to read is, do you think it's appropriate for the Board of Education to agree to a budget or tax rate increase target with the town council at the start of the budget process before needs are even clear?
I'm going to be on the other side of that spectrum. I respect the answer that Dave put forward, but I do think that having those conversations are important. I think we need to work as a town under that one town, one budget guideline, and it gives us some parameters. And what is great about having that collaboration and those open dialogues is we can come back and we can say, I know we agreed to this, but these are the needs that the district has. And for instance, last year, we had our largest increase that we'd ever had, not this past budget, the budget before. We had a 5.81% increase on our budget because we were communicating with the town council all the way through. We were able to explain the needs and they agreed with us and they helped us to get to that point. I also feel that it is changing the dialogue within the community. And I'd rely on the fact that we've had 3 past budgets. They've gone consecutively in 3 years that we've been having this open communication and these regular dialogues. It's working. It is taking the fractionalization of our town and it's starting to shift that to be more a unified town.
Thank you, Leanne. Mary Shannon Lindstrom, the question is regarding the budget and how we start the process, and should it be, should goals and should that be in place before you even start the process?
I think we certainly can have goals and have an idea of what we would hope to see. I don't think we can set those in sand and say this is all we're going to do. What I truly believe with the budget cycle that we should see is that we are looking every year at the dollars we spent last year and determining, are these things we need to spend going forward into the next year? Yes or no? Do we have efficiencies that we can make use of so that we can eliminate things in the budget? Yes or no? Have priorities changed at the school? As we all know, we're in COVID now. The priorities that we're looking at now are completely different from what we were looking at last year for priorities. So are the priorities different at the schools? Yes or no? And that's how you start having dialogue and creating your budget. having said that, I think it's highly, highly important that the school board be able to work hand in hand and closely with town council in a collaborative manner versus versus the broken off and splintered relationship we might have seen in the past. I would like to see more collaboration, more work done together, and going back to that idea of we are one town. Let's rally behind that one budget.
Thank you, Mary Shannon Lindstrom. Leanne, I'm going to come at you with one last question. We're going to be able to fit it in, and if we could try to do it in a minute, you know, try to be a little shorter with our answer. I know it's hard to do. You know, we've been seeing this with a lot of communities who are really pressured to be able to find workers for the school system. What are you prepared to do financially to assure that we have enough substitute teachers and staff this winter, given COVID-19?
Great question. And that's a really hard one. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of room in our budget in order to have people on a retainer. I think that what we need to do is ensure that we are providing as many safety measures as possible, being in the top of our game with those safety measures to ensure that people who come in feel as though coming into our buildings that they are going to be safe as they are providing that education to the students.
Thank you, Leanne. Mary Shannon?
I agree. I think that safety net and making sure that we are doing all that we can, again, remembering the community aspect as well, to maintain safe and secure buildings for our teachers is paramount. I know it is very tough. The Maine unemployment ratio is so low compared to other states, and it's so tough to find quality employees. But I don't think that means that we stop trying. I think we might have to look at creative waves of hiring, making sure, going back to that budget, that discussion with contract negotiation, making sure that we make employees feel that they're supported during those discussions so that they want to stay. I think we can have that same conversation with incoming employee substitute teachers as well.
Thank you, Mary Shannon. John David Dittmer, what are you prepared to do financially to assure that we have enough substitutes and staff this winter, given COVID-19?
Well, having not seen the budgets on what we have for substitutes, I can't say I'm going to, allot this money or give this kind of bonus or anything like
Right.
that. I think we do need to find, as Mary Shannon said, creative ways of looking at it. There is a wealth of talent within the community, and I think we as a community may need to step up a little more than we have before. Asking someone to go into a school and substitute teach when there is a pandemic going on is not an easy ask, and I don't know how well it will work. At the same time, if we do need those people and we can't get them, then we have to shut down. We'll eventually have to shut down and wait for everyone to get healthy. It's a balancing act. I would say that if people make minimal qualifications for substitute teaching and have an interest, maybe we could encourage them and just let it be known that we need people to step up in a moment of crisis to help out if they can. And if they have a day off that they can commit to substitute teaching, that may be an answer.
Okay, thank you very much, John David Dittmer, and thank all three of you, Leanne Castellanos, Mary Shannon Lindstrom, and John David Dittmer for running for the Board of Education. There are 2 seats open this year, and we have 3 candidates running for those 2 seats. I will give Leanne a little time to prepare for her closing statement, followed by Mary Shannon, and then John David Dittmer. I do want to say that we had a number of questions that were coming in, some topics that we unfortunately didn't have time to cover. Childcare, the mural issue, which John touched on a little bit, sports and the lack thereof, currently. And then also we never asked a question about the Moose being on the football field earlier today, which you may have seen on social media. With that, I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and for closing statements, we'd like to keep you at 2 minutes each, and we will begin with Leanne Cazelonis.
Thank you, Kevin, for hosting, and for the Scarborough Chamber of Commerce for holding this event tonight. Providing the community an opportunity to hear from the candidates is invaluable, and I appreciate your ongoing support with this each year. For those who are watching live or on delay, thank you for staying informed, for taking the time to listen to what each of us has had to say about why we want to serve you in this capacity. Each person running for an elected position wants what's best for our community, and those for the school board seats to improve upon our strong educational system. What sets me apart from my worthy colleagues here tonight is my experience. I am currently serving in my first term as a board member, and for the last 2 years have been honored to be the board's chair. I know the hours that board members are expected to put in, the work that needs to be done, and even how to navigate the inevitable criticisms we face with those decisions. Yes, there have been periods of intensity and of major upheavals, and I have worked to bring stability, calmness, and decorum as we navigated through those changes while we were still forming as a cohesive board. We have been faced with replacing 2 key leaders in our district in the span of a year, all without missing a beat, even when a pandemic hit. In these 3 years, we have built a strong board from the ground up, listening to all sides of the discussions, proactively seeking out that feedback, and then asking even more questions to make certain we've uncovered any hidden obstacles. Our meetings are full of conversations and knowledge sharing, so we can ensure the public is aware of all the information that goes into making those decisions. We are working collaboratively with the town council, not because we're puppets, because we know civility and unity within the elected bodies brings a more successful outcome, as 3 past first ballot budgets in 3 consecutive years have proven. We don't always get along with a council. However, when the needs arise, we can move mountains and even Augusta to accomplish our shared goals. We recently collaborated on and secured $59,000 in funding to offer a childcare solution on remote days for students enrolled in our community services aftercare programming. Not everyone has agreed with all the decisions I've made, and admittedly, there are times when I have second-guessed those same decisions, emotions I have shown, or comments I have made. I have always remained true to my belief that being part of the solution is what's most important, and in this time of uncertainty, running again was the best way I could continue to support our district and town. I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd, so I continue my work on the many complex initiatives already underway, continue to strengthen the working relationships across the town by providing a unifying voice, and continue supporting our students, staff, and community as a member of the Board of Education. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Leanne Cazelonis. Mary Shannon Lindstrom, your closing statement.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for hosting this tonight. And thank you for the Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to participate. I think this has been a fantastic opportunity to hear from the candidates and for us to share our ideas with you, those that are watching and watching on delay as well. I believe we have a really strong opportunity ahead of us. We are in the midst of turmoil right now with COVID, and we've had turmoil, but I think this is an opportunity for us to really bridge our divide in our town and start working collaboratively for the best interest of our students and our teachers and really our community as a whole. If elected, I promise to take my time and do research and work to understand all sides of the issues before making decisions. I know we can't always be on the same side, and I know that sometimes some of the decisions that are made are not ones that everybody agrees with. But what I'm really hoping to see is that we can bring some civility back to our conversations and that basic understanding that it's okay that we disagree at times, but it's okay to respectfully disagree, and that works well. At the end of the day, I think all of us here, all 3 of us really want what's best for our students, what's best for our teachers, and what's best for the town as a whole. And I just want to close off tonight with my view of the school system. I grew up not here in Maine, I grew up down south in Florida in a community that was extremely tight knit. It was a town where everybody showed up on Friday nights for the football games, the stands were packed, and people went to the art shows and supported the students. They went to the theater productions and the drama productions. It was a whole community-wide effort at supporting the schools. So when my husband and my family and I moved here about 4 years ago, we were really looking for that same community feel. So when we were looking around and deciding where we wanted to end up, we really felt that here in Scarborough. And that is something that's so important because schools are so much more than buildings. They really are the heartbeat of the community. Sometimes they're more than book and paper as well, because sometimes for our students, school represents the one meal they get a day. Sometimes it represents an opportunity for them to thrive and to grow and to become leaders. These are the places that we send our kids every day to do that. I would be so proud to serve our community on the Scarborough School Board, and I hope that when you cast your ballot, you will vote Mary Shannon Lindstrom for the school board. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary Shannon Lindstrom. John David Dittmer, your closing statement.
Thank you. For the last several years, we have faced annual budget challenges. Even minimal school budgets face fierce opposition based on the proposition that we can't afford it. Some in our community have portrayed our schools as a burden, increasing our taxes and offering nothing in return. We've lost significant programs and some of our best teachers and staff because of this constant negative drumbeat. Yet it took a crisis to show how wrong this argument is. As schools start this fall, it is clear the COVID-19 crisis is more than just an inconvenience. It has made a major impact on our daily activities and has substantially changed how we view the function and the purpose of our schools. No longer are we talking about just classrooms, but nutrition, extracurriculars, transportation, and technology. They've all become topics of this conversation. This crisis has shown us that schools are not just daycare, and teachers are more than babysitters. We depend on teachers and staff as frontline employees in a battle to keep moving forward in a fight against a pandemic that is holding us back. I believe we reached a nexus in Scarborough, a point where we need to choose what our schools are going to look like, not only for this year, but for decades to come. We can sit back and wait until this current crisis is over, or we can look beyond this immediate crisis and plan for a better new normal. Now is the time for a proactive approach to solidify our schools and grow them with our community. I don't have the answers to all the questions that will face us over the next 3 years. As a member of the school board, however, I promise to consider both the immediate issues and the future issues. And when it comes to the budget, support it loudly. Scarborough schools have done so much for my children. They have benefited from all the best the schools have to offer. And as one enters high school and the other prepares to leave, I believe they are better prepared for life, at least in part because of the Scarborough schools. I'm running for the school board because I want the next generations of Scarborough children to have the same opportunities that my girls did. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The three candidates running for 2 seats on the Scarborough Board of Education, Leanne Cazelonis, Mary Shannon Lindstrom, and John David Dittmer. Thank you very much for joining us. Did a great job. We just scratched the surface too. Have a great evening, and thank you again for coming. And we'll get ready now for the town council portion of our program, and we're going to change things up. Have a good evening, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Look forward to meeting you all
Yes,
someday.
Thank you.
Of course, I've met Leanne before. And John. Okay, we are 2/3 of the way through Scarborough Candidates Night for 2020. I'm Kevin Freeman. I am your moderator again this year. This event is brought to you by the Scarborough Community Chamber of Commerce. Dennis Meehan is the president now from the Portland Sea Dogs, and Art Dillon is joining us again, an active former past president of the chamber and the guy who brings those fantastic summer concerts to the town park each year. Also, Nancy Kroll from the Scarborough Public Library is here with me again this year. She's got that in front. It's sccquestions@gmail.com. And we're now moving to the town council portion of our program. And we will bring on all our candidates. Welcome Jean Marie Caterina. Welcome Jonathan Anderson. Welcome Freyla Tarpinian. Let's see, we are also looking for Nick McGee to come and join us, and John Clucci. And I'm going to take this moment to get set up for the town council portion. And let's see, welcome Nick McGee.
Thank you.
And John Clucci is coming up next.
John, do you have your video off?
We are not seeing John Clucci as yet. Karen Martin is behind the scenes, the SEDCO executive director. She has been running everything and organizing it all. The logistics that we went through in a very short amount of time, because we didn't know you were all running until September 2nd. And you know, we wanted to do this in person, as we have for so many years. We weighed the options, we looked at things, and you know what? We just felt that this was probably the best way to do it this year. And I must admit, sitting down at my house on Sterlingwood Drive, just off of Broad Turn Road, is not too bad. And I won't say that I'm wearing shorts, but it's a warm evening. So if we get John on here, we'll get going with our final portion of the program. Again, the election is on Tuesday, November 3rd. We felt that we wanted to get this program on as soon as possible. Welcome, John. And especially knowing that the number of absentee ballot requests that have been made in Scarborough, well in excess of 5,000 at this point. And also with the early voting period right upon us, beginning next week, that we wanted to get our program on as soon as possible. So let's meet the candidates and we'll get going. Questions that you would like to ask, send to sccquestions@gmail.com, and they'll transfer them to me so we can ask them of you. Our first candidate, Jonathan Anderson, lives on Owens Way. He's married and has 2 children. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in East Asian Studies from the University of Virginia, a Master of Business Administration from the University of Maryland at College Park. He's a marketing manager and has 10 years of service as a civil servant for the federal government, specializing on financial management, strategic planning, performance management, and program management. Welcome, Jonathan Anderson. Jean Marie Katerina from Gorham Road is married with 1 daughter. Jean is seeking re-election to the Scarborough Town Council. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Public Administration from the University of Maine, a master's degree in social work and nonprofit administration from Boston College. She is a real estate broker at North Star Realty in Scarborough, part owner of 4 other small businesses. Her experience includes the Scarborough Town Council from 2013 to 2016, and also from 2017 to now, serving as the Council Vice Chair, the Ordinance Committee Chair, Communications Committee Chair. She Maine Municipal Association Legislative Policy Committee member. She's a past member of the Scarborough Board of Assessment Review and the Scarborough Conservation Commission. Welcome, Jean Marie Katerina. John Clucci from Wildwood Lane is married with 3 daughters. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in Applied Actuarial Mathematics. He's a motel owner, and his political experience and civic experience includes being on the Scarborough Town Council from 2017 to now. John is seeking re-election. He's a member of the Finance, Communications, and Rules and Policies Committee. He's a liaison to the Scarborough Conservation Commission and the Scarborough Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors. He is past president of the Portland Porpoise Swim Club, a member of EcoMaine's Executive Committee. He is the Scarborough representative, in fact, and also the Greater Portland Council of Governments. Welcome, John Clucci. Nicholas McGee. Nick McGee is, you're right down the road from me, Nick, out there on Riverwoods Drive. He is married with 3 children. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in History and Political Science from Providence College. He is the owner of Summit Property Management, LLC. Nick's political and civic experience. He is a member and current chairperson of the Scarborough Planning Board from 2013 to now. He's been a Little League Baseball AA coach and in 2019, and also treasurer at Maine Connections Academy from 2014 to 2017. Welcome, Nick McGee. And Freyla Tarpinian from Bonnie Grove Drive is married with 2 daughters. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in History and English, American Literature from Brandeis University, Juris Doctorate from Boston University School of Law. She is an attorney, and her political and civic experience is she was treasurer of the Johnson Road Association, a member of the Scarborough Board of Assessment Review, a member of the Scarborough Comprehensive Plan Team, and past member of the Board of Directors of Riding to the Top Seedlings to Sunflowers. Welcome, Freyla Tarpinian. Nancy Kroll is joining me. Nancy will be our timer. We're looking to start off with a 2-minute introduction, opening comments, and I will start alphabetically with Jonathan Anderson.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin, and everyone for hosting us tonight. And thank you to those watching today and when this goes into syndication. So I moved to Maine 4 years ago with my family. We had a 1 and a 3-year-old at the time. We wanted to move here away from Washington, D.C. to raise our young ones. My wife is originally from Cape Elizabeth. And so that's what brought us to Maine, to be closer to her parents. When we were looking for where to live, it was very easy to pick Scarborough. The beaches, the proximity to the airport and Portland and all the amenities that are there. But most importantly to us, the excellent schools. And one of the things that's been so great since we've chosen Scarborough as our community is just meeting everybody and all the different people that live here. I've met people that have lived here for 80 years and helped establish the community that we all live in today. I've met many people who have retired and are now living on fixed income. I've met a lot of families like mine who have moved to Scarborough with all the attractiveness of being close to Portland. And I've also talked to a lot of people who really miss that quaint rural beach town that Scarborough once was. And I think it's really important as we grow that we work together and do it together versus against each other. And I think our challenges are becoming more and more complex. And I think I have the background and professional experience to help us navigate through that. I have overseen a 1.2 billion public-private partnership, so I know how to work with the development teams as we work on our development and growth. I've overseen budget processes ranging from $30 million to $1 billion. I've developed strategic plans and performance plans to hold organizations accountable and make sure that we can deliver to the taxpayer and to our shareholders. I've launched products across the globe, including a coronavirus test for pets. So I've had a lot of experience addressing a lot of complex challenges, and I'm excited to bring that experience to Scarborough as we work through our growth. Tonight, I hope to talk a little bit about COVID recovery, smart growth, quality education, financial sustainability, and town culture. So thank you for joining in today.
Thank you, Jonathan Anderson. Jean Marie Caterina.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank the Chamber for sponsoring this forum. I know it's not easy being on Zoom. I live on Zoom, I swear, but you know, the more I'm on it, the better I think we get on it. So there you go. Just to lay out very quickly, people probably know me. I've served 2 terms on the town council, and I would like to continue with the work that I've started. I feel very strongly that my experience, it matters now more than ever, given what's happened with COVID-19 and how it's turned our world upside down. I think that my ability to work with others, my knowledge of state and federal government programming, and the ability to pick up a phone and do some lobbying or calling is good for the town. I am running because I feel very strongly that we need to maintain our stability of property taxes. We don't want to see any spikes in them. We need to support our future through quality schools. And we really need to represent our seniors, particularly those who are most vulnerable. And I will talk more about those as we go along. But thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jean Marie Caterina, seeking re-election. Also seeking re-election, John Clucci, your opening statement.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin, for hosting us again and for adapting to our new way. Contrary to Jean Marie's comments, I've been on Zoom a lot lately, but I just got thrown for a loop about 5 minutes ago and could not find my way in. So I'm happy that I was able to and that I'm able to join you. I got some words of advice for my daughters. I have 3 girls in the school system, and they said, try not to embarrass us, Dad. So I'll try. I will say I was much more prepared last year. I've actually only been on the council a little over a year. I filled the seat of Sean Babby, who left midterm. But it feels like a lot longer than that for some reason. A lot's happened in the past year, and I think I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish and the contributions I've been able to make. And it's been busy. We started with the Piper Shores expansion right out of the gate when I first took office. Then the reval was already well underway, and I wrote the memo that actually encouraged the assessor to scrutinize a couple areas a little further, including the Higgins Beach area, Prouts Neck, and I was able to analyze the data, and I think show at the end of the day that the results were somewhat reasonable after some adjustments were made. Got to work with Kevin on the community center, moving that topic forward. We brought Bessie Commons and Jocelyn Place in. We renewed the town manager's contract, and we've had COVID. And I'm sure we're going to have some questions and get to cover a lot of those a little bit more. But it's been a busy year. It's been a fulfilling year for me, and it's something I'd like to continue doing for another term. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, John Clucci. Nick McGee, your opening comments.
I just want to say thank you for having us here tonight. This is nice. I do, of course, prefer the variety, but we've all started to make these adjustments as necessary. You gave a nice little recap of kind of my background. Three children in the Scarborough school systems. I've lived here for a little over 10 years. I'm a native Mainer. Professionally, I've done a little bit of everything. That's the type of mix and experience I'm going to bring to the table. It's for anyone in the community that likes to be bored to tears and watch planning board meetings at night. I think you've had a senior watching me at work, and I think what you'll find is that what I can bring to the table is kind of that clear perspective, just that willingness and openness to communicate with what appears to be at times adversarial parties. And that's what I always try to remind people. You can have adversarial positions, but it doesn't mean you're necessarily adversaries. And I think that a lot of the work I've done on the planning board goes to show that we've gone through some very difficult issues on that level. And I see these challenges in the community. I mean, first and foremost is the high density development that we're going through. We need to be able to address it. We need to make sure that we're being sustainable about the way that we approach not just listening to the character of our community, but what is it doing to our infrastructure? What's it doing to the community services, our school systems? And, that coupled with, a couple of these larger issues that loom out there, whether it's, the Downs development, whether it's the, comprehensive plan discussion that we're going to need to have, all of these things, I think I bring the set of tools necessary to try to help bring interested parties and do the best we can for the community. So I'm running. It was my main motivator, was kind of looking around and saying, gee, we need somebody that's got some experience, and I think I could fill that hole. I think I could do that.
Thank you, Nick. Nick McGee, his opening statement. And now, Freyla Tarpinian, the floor is yours.
Thank you. This spring, after another at-home preschool battle with my 4-year-old Ella, we decided to take a break and we read a book. We read Grace for President. It's a story about a young girl's quest to become president of her school and her plan to make positive changes for her community. It explains the electoral process and how representation really matters. She asked me, Mama, when do I get a vote? And I said, when you're 18. And she said, well, then who represents me now? So I talked to her about the president, I talked to her about the governor, and I talked to her about our town council. She looked at me and said, Mom, you should run for president. And I laughed, but it did get me to thinking. My name's Freela Tarpinian, and I'm running for a seat on the town council here in Scarborough. When our council is debating really important issues like childcare options and school funding, it's really important that we have a working parent with young children at that table, helping to make those decisions. And I'm not only interested in ensuring that our kids attend really good schools. I also really care about that when they graduate into a community that has a lot going for it, that has smart economic initiatives, that has stable property taxes, and that ensures that its resources are wisely spent. That it grows responsibly and importantly is a really good steward of our environment, that we have a sustainable plan for sea level rise and for our warming environment. My chosen profession is as a prosecutor, where I split my time between litigating serious felony cases and running a busy law firm, dealing with financial issues, budgets, personnel, and drafting and implementing criminal justice policy. Prior to joining that office, I was a small business owner, and my heart goes out to all of those affected right now with our current situation. I do know what it's like to stay awake at night thinking about how to make payroll. The most important skill I bring is that I'm a good listener. I value input from all sides of a situation. I'm very experienced with conflict and negotiation. And I recognize the value of collaboration and cooperation whenever possible, but I'm also steadfast in standing up for my beliefs and my values. And that's why I'm asking for your support on November 3rd for a seat on town council.
Thank you, Frank.
One correction, Kevin. You introduced me. I was not on the Board of Assessment review or the comp plan team here in Scarborough. That was in Wyndham, and I think it's important that people know that.
Thank you, and I apologize for the error on that. But welcome, Freila Tarpinian. We will now, we'll start, John, we're going to go double with you to begin with. You will answer the first question, and we've had like 6 questions that have come in already. 2, right, Nancy? SCC questions at gmail.com. SCCC questions at gmail.com. Jonathan Anderson, the question is, what will you do to ensure that our town council works together collaboratively and remains civil with each other, other towns, other town entities, and the community?
So I think the most important thing is that we work together and listen to each other. I think those of us here tonight and those of us are those that are on the town council today all bring very different perspectives to the table. And I think a lot of that comes from our different beliefs and values and what's important to us. And I think we have to learn about that from each other to try and figure out how we can identify some common solutions. So I think it's really about listening to each other, understanding where we derive our values from, and then trying to figure out where do we have shared goals and shared things that we want to move forward together, and how do we want to engage the community in actually doing that. I think community engagement is one of the most critical aspects of the council. I think it's important that we find ways to work together, but I think it's most important that we understand the needs clearly from the residents that we're chosen to represent. And I think the same thing goes for working with other towns and other organizations to support our community. We really have to find that shared common goal that we can work towards together and make sure that we pull in those organizations and resources that can partner with us to make that happen.
Thank you, Jonathan Anderson. Jean Marie Caterina, civil discourse, working together collaboratively. How can we accomplish that? How will you accomplish that?
Well, again, I was first elected in 2013, and I will tell you that in the good old days, that was an issue. And what we have done over the years is we start every new year with a workshop with the counselors, everyone who's newly elected, and the current counselors. We have a meeting and we talk about personal styles. We have someone come in and do a workshop with us, and that has seemed to help as far as, working collaboratively. I can tell you that sometimes you have to agree to disagree on issues, and it's how people do it. You can bring people, to the table, and they don't always act the way you think they should, but that's okay. You need to leave it behind and move forward. I think that we've done pretty well with this council. And I'm a little surprised too. I would add to that is also working collaboratively with the school board. That's a very important thing to be able to do, because the school board sets policy and whatever for their side of the aisle, so to speak, but we have the purse strings. So we all need to be working together there also. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Jean Marie Caterina. And John Clucci, what will you do to ensure that our town council works together collaboratively and remains civil with each other, other town entities, and the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with modeling good behavior. And, you know, when I worked at Liberty Mutual, one of the core tenets was treat everybody with dignity and respect. And I think I really gravitated towards that. And I think it's kind of how I live my life. I don't have a problem with anybody on the council, and I think it's reciprocal. I think they would feel fine calling me and disagreeing or not. But I think what's really important to remember is when you're in a group of 7, there's no I really, unless you have 4 or 5 people that are solidly behind you, whatever you're trying to accomplish. You're not going to get anything done. So I think you need to try to find that common ground and find what the priorities are for the group, and then you want conflicting opinions at the table. So you want, for me, growth is a good topic for us to be talking about in our comp plan. And who I want at the table is somebody who's pro-growth and pro-developer, and somebody who's not. And let's see how we can help those forces come together to paint a picture of Scarborough that is going to work for Scarborough, for the people that are there. So thank you.
Thank you, John Clucci. Nick McGee, what will you do to ensure that our town council works together collaboratively, remains civil with each other, other departments in town, and the community?
Yeah, I think our fellow members here have actually all said it really well. It starts with respect. When you engage with somebody, they come from a spot where they have different life experiences or different viewpoints, and it's based on what they've gone through personally. And it's try to walk a mile in somebody else's mentality. Don't be so quick to judge. There are always usually very valid reasons for your feelings, your emotions, and your thoughts behind some of these processes. At the end of the day, you've got to look at that person and say, okay, I might not be on the same as you, but I respect where you're coming from. And after we get through this issue, I want to know that I can go back to you and work with you on the next one. Because the last thing we can do is really burn those bridges. And that goes for anyone that you're working with on the council. It's going with anyone you're communicating with in the community. And it certainly goes for any relationship you're going to have with other boards in town, including the school board. There's always some disagreements here, but can you treat someone with the respect they deserve, so you can continue the conversation on to the next topic? Because at the end of the day, we're all neighbors. I think we're all, we all have the same thought. Let's do what's best for Scarborough, for our children and our seniors and our community. So just start with respect, a little bit of modesty when you go into the negotiations, and you don't know everything is probably a good thing to carry around with you, is that, it's okay to be it as you get older.
Thank you, Nick. Freyla Tarpinian, what will you do to ensure that our town council works together and remains civil to others?
I do only thing I could do, which is, take care of myself and make sure that I come to the table as authentically as possible, with a patience and a willingness to be open-minded and listen to each of the fellow counselors. And that goes beyond the counselors, also to other board members. It's extremely important to be collaborative and to work together, because I don't think anyone could say better than John did, which is there's no I in the board. With 7 members, you do need to build coalitions. I have a lot of experience doing this in my day-to-day. So currently, as a prosecutor, I litigate extremely serious cases having to do with people who have died or people who have been violently abused or other ways violated. And I managed to come to the table with them and their counsel, and we try to negotiate. And when that fails, we go to trial. But one of the things I pride myself on is treating everybody, no matter where they come from, with dignity and respect and professionalism, which is what really the heart of that is just being a professional. And I would bring that with me to the council meeting and beyond. It's very important to have differing opinions at the same table. We are stronger with our differences, and if good decisions are not made unless every argument is considered, and if you have everybody thinking exactly the same, those arguments are not really validly completely fleshed out as well as they could be. And our town deserves to have every issue debated at the best as it can be so that we can make the best decisions moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Freyla Tarkanian. And I'm getting some feedback here from somewhere. Jean Marie Caterina, you will start the second round here. Here's the question which came in from our audience. There has been a considerable amount of growth here in Scarborough.
Oh.
Specifically, the student population is growing exponentially, and school facilities cannot seem to keep up. Yet more and more housing developments continue to be approved. How can the council better manage the balance of growth within the school system that keeps it competitive when year after year having the school budget pass is difficult and divisive?
Well, thank you. That one's right in my wheelhouse. Right now, we are reviewing the growth ordinance as well as the comprehensive plan. So stay tuned. We will be definitely actively working on those starting in the next couple of weeks. I do want to differ. The data actually does not show an exponential growth in school population. People hear anecdotally about it, but any data that I've seen that has come from the school department itself does not show a blowing up of growth of the schools.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, we do need to plan forward. As was mentioned, I'm in real estate and people are moving to Scarborough. There's going to be a turnover in the, how do I want to put it, the older housing stock coming up as people age out of housing. So I do believe that we will see people moving in with children in the school. So we do need to start thinking about what are we going to do with the primary school situation. I know the school department has brought forward a potential consolidated school. And I look forward to having more discussions around that. We do have a wonderful planning board. I'm looking at Mr. McGee, who reviews everything that comes forward. So we are on top of that. We're working on it. And as I said, please pay close attention in the next few weeks. Thanks.
Thank you, Jean Marie Caterina. John Clucci, how can the town council better manage the balance of growth within the school system to keep it competitive when year after year, passing the school budget is difficult and divisive?
That's a good question. Similar to Jean Marie, I think that we actually need to be transparent and honest with the numbers. Our school enrollment is not growing exponentially. It was growing for a couple of years, but over the past years we've shrank. The space needs for our students and for education to happen the way we would like it to has changed and evolved over time. So with that, we need to look at whether our facilities can meet the needs of today and tomorrow. And I think that should be a continual process. I think the school board, and they are doing this, should be the ones driving that process. I think that's a big part of their role in their job. I think as town councilors, we can be supportive and involved in that dialogue. And when it comes to actually, that's for the facility side. For the growth side, I think that's an extremely important thing for us to be talking about right now. We have a comprehensive plan that has been worked on for the past couple of years that we are going to look to bring to market and kind of start talking about and see if it's the right vision for the next 10 years of Scarborough. We're also looking to form a downtown ad hoc downtown committee that can help flesh out some of the key elements that we want to have in Scarborough's downtown, which includes the Downs property, Oak Hill, and where the municipal campus is and along Route 1. I think those are a couple of critical discussions that we need to have as a community. And from that, so what we're trying to do is plan for the growth that we anticipate. And that's how we'll kind of pace that growth over the next 10 years so that we're not surprised. And I think that's really the key, is that we want to have controlled, well-planned, thought out growth.
Thank you, John Clucci. Certainly, there is a perception that, that because there are apartments and houses coming to town, that the schools are going to be taxed with more students and more needs. Nick McGee, you have sat on the planning board for a number of years and you see it. How can the town council better manage the balance of schools and growth of housing in the community?
Yeah, it's so like I think I started out saying that this is why I got involved at this level. This is why I wanted to seek a seat on the council, because of these discussions. You know, John brought up and we both had that the growth management ordinance is such an important part of how we continue to manage and be sustainable with our growth. I personally think that the high density developments that we've been seeing a lot of in town and continuing to see in town, I would like to see that aspect of growth slow a great deal, to be honest with you. We have just some quick numbers for you. I think over 450 units that have been already approved through the planning board process that have not been built yet. So it's not only what you're seeing there now that's in development and still going up, it's what's been approved and what's in the pipeline. And I think that's the important number. Are we going to be able to manage that continued growth? I think there's also, you know, and I will concur that after read the school budget, it does appear that our school age population is leveling off. However, I do think that based on the future and anticipated growth for the community, that's not always going to be the case. So then we run into issues such as, you know, we're already into modulars in some of those schools. So is a concern about how we're housing the student population that we have and what they have for facilities and resources. Two, how are we going to manage it if it grows any further? So I think that the comprehensive plan is a great point. I would just encourage the community to really participate in that aspect of this. That's our vision. That's our future. And for me, I would prefer to see a more of a bedroom community, suburbia, a nice little quiet town. I'm not in favor of the high density city, cross streets model with grid patterns and traffic. Every time we add one of these units, we are adding more traffic. And I'll stop because my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick McGee. Freyla Tarpinian, how can you as a town councilor better manage the balance with all the growth going on out in the community?
Well, of course, you have to stay in your role. So as a town council, the job is to be guided by the comprehensive plan, which hasn't been accepted yet, but is a tremendous effort by a lot of citizens. And also you have the ability to modify any existing ordinances or statutes ordinances around building that are required, so that buildings have to be in conformity with them. And that's really how you guide it. The rest is up to in a large way to the private developers who want to develop in a location that is a desirable place for people to move. And so you have to look at that balance between the private sector, which has the right to develop within the existing laws and our existing laws. So the town council can use the ordinances to sort of guide growth, and they should be guided by the comprehensive plan, which is supposed to be the vision of all the residents, or a large number of the residents in doing so. And I would again urge the residents to look at that comprehensive plan. It's 170 pages, lots of pretty pictures, but also a lot of really important ideals about what we want Scarborough to be. And so I think that's the proper role of the council, which is you set the framework, the guidelines, if you will, of what's permissible and not permissible, because that's your proper role. And then developers make decisions based on that. And the town council can also bring to bear some other tools in their tool belt to attract or to maybe not attract different types of development. And so you have to balance everyone's needs in doing that, but also respect your role in that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Freyla Tarpinian. Jonathan Anderson, this was an audience question, speaking about anecdotally about the student population growth and the burden that may have on facilities, while at the same time, housing developments continue to be built and approved and built in Scarborough. How can the town council better manage the balance of growth for the school system while also managing the growth that's out there?
Yeah, I think it's about making choices. I think we have a lot of choices we need to make as a community going forward. Freyla referred to the comprehensive plan, which is great. There's over 100 plus next steps that we should consider as we grow and develop as a community. And I don't think we can do it all right away. And so we have to work with the community to really prioritize and make sure that we're managing the implementation of that plan. I'd really like to see us, also look more at how we do our financial planning. As Nick mentioned, we have a pipeline of houses in the path for development, and we need to make sure that we have the funds coming in that are available to fund our schools and maintain our services. I am concerned that we're growing so fast and that we are going to be getting so many people in the future that our schools aren't going to be able to keep up with it. And so I just want to make sure as we grow, we really make sure we can maintain services, not just for the schools, but for things like emergency services and other areas that we also don't want to lose control over because we're growing so quickly. I think, while we've talked about the results so far, I'm an avid Zillower. I love to go on my Zillow app and look at properties. And every time I look, there's always new homes coming up on the market in Scarborough that are being built. And so those homes are going to get filled with families. And then we also have seniors who are likely going to be downsizing and moving out of their current homes that are going to bring in more families. And I think we are going to reach a point in the next 5 to 10 years where we're going to have a real problem. And we need to make sure that we plan ahead and not just think about what happened in the past or what's happening next year, but really try and look 5, 10 years out and make sure we have a financial plan and an investment plan that goes along with it.
Thank you, Jonathan Anderson. John Clucci, you will start the next round of questions. This is a question that came in via our email, sccquestions@gmail.com. What steps, if any, should the council take to address climate change?
That's a great question. We should start to come up with a plan. It's touched on in the comprehensive plan, but not enough. I think that we should actually work, and probably in the next year to a year and a half, to come up with a climate action plan for Scarborough. I think we have a number of vulnerabilities, and there's been a number of working groups that have convened in the past. But I drive by the marsh every day on Route 1, and some of you might remember a dozen years ago or so that was virtually underwater, had to be lifted. And I think it wouldn't take much for us to find ourselves in a similar situation again. And I think we need to be prepared for that. So I think we should be starting that conversation back up.
Thank you, John Clucci. I opened a PDF copy of the comprehensive plan because it's been mentioned so many times here as we've started here in the opening minutes. But Nick McGee, the question that came out was, what steps, if any, should the council take to address climate change? Your views.
Thank you. So I'd love to take credit for all of these wonderful ideas, but I can't. I sit on a planning board with members that are basically experts in their fields, and they've taught me so much about it. And I'll in 2 spots here, at least. One, when you get into electrical, so if you get into any type of EV charging stations and vehicles of that nature, we currently don't have anything in our used ordinances or our zoning requirements that would say, hey, if you're a development of this side, you need to start putting in EV chargers. So if you want to try to help facilitate some of this change, where are we working? At what point can we say, a project of your size and magnitude really should be including and incorporating items like this that would go for solar panels or any type of alternative use energies. The other aspect of it is another member of mine is always talking about stormwater, and that's a side effect of some of the change that we see. So how do we deal? And she'll forever, and I'll give her all the credit in the world. She's fantastic. She's so good when it comes to this stuff. But we're forever just modeling everything that we're doing for stormwater management here in Scarborough off of the base minimum. And she's always said, hey, why can't we go over and above? Why can't we protect our streams more? Why can't we make sure, worry about Route 1 flooding out, over by the marsh because of either rising water levels or things of that nature. So those ideas is original to me. They're not. I'm grabbing them for my fellow board members. And you should reach out to people that have expertise in these types of areas and ask them, how can we make it better here in Scarborough? So
Thank you, Nick
that's my
McGee.
piece.
Freyla Tarpinian, what steps, if any, should the council take to address climate change?
The council has to take steps to address climate change now. It's pretty much a consensus, whatever your beliefs are about why it's happening. There is absolute scientific consensus that if it's happening, our planet is warming, and we need to address it through two different types of strategies. We need to look at mitigation strategies to slow down climate change. That has to do with reducing emissions, looking at how we get our electricity, and other techniques to do that. And then on the other side of it, how do we adapt? So that makes sure we have places where seniors can go if it's too hot to cool down for the 3 weeks in the summer where it touches 100 or gets really high, so that everybody in town isn't rushing out to buy an air conditioner. It's having to do with, and there's also a lot of gains that can be made, community centers type that have to do with splash pads, so children and families can gather in places where they can cool down, but there's multiple uses of spaces, and they're able to enjoy the natural benefits that Scarborough has, but they're also able to mitigate and adapt to the different issues that we face because of climate change. I think it's absolutely critical that the town council take steps to address concrete steps, not just desires and affirmations about what would be nice to do, but actually create an action plan that is realistic and start implementing it as soon as possible. I don't believe that our future generations have the ability to wait for us to do that. So it's very important.
Thank you, Freyla Tarpinian. Jonathan Anderson, what steps, if any, should the council take to address climate change?
So climate change is a global issue. And I think while it's important we find the little things we can do within our community, I think we'll be much more effective at addressing it if we can partner with those around us. I know Portland and South Portland recently created their joint One Climate Future plan. And I think there's an opportunity for us to partner with them collectively to figure out how all of the towns in the area can work together. So that way we're leveraging our joint resources to make an even bigger impact. Going back to growth, we just talked about, I think Jean Marie had mentioned, we have the growth management ordinance up for review. A lot of it really focuses on trying to manage the impact to the schools, but I think what we should consider is also what's the impact to the environment. Nick mentioned a couple of things I think that can be done that we should try and maybe create a little bit more stringent requirements on GHG gas emissions, making sure that we have LEED certified buildings and homes, that we can make sure that we're actually, trying to do what we can as we grow to also protect our climate. So I think trying to figure out what we can do within Scarborough, but again, partnering with other organizations and even the state to make sure that we can participate and really leverage resources to make the biggest impact.
Thank you, Jonathan Anderson. Jean Marie Caterino, what steps, if any, should the council take to address climate change?
Well, I can tell you everything that the folks have spoken about previously make a lot of sense. I want to give a little history because I think there's a perception out there we aren't doing anything, and we are and have been. We have a sustainability committee, for example, and I'm the liaison to it. We have a sustainability coordinator in town as a staff person. The Conservation Commission, on which I served at one point, they've been doing a lot of work around what they call SLOG, which is sea level rise, and has been working with Public Works as to what are we going to do about, we're going to have to build up some roads, the Marsh, for example, Pine Point Road is an example of that. We have Trigen and solar in town on buildings. I'd love to see us encouraging solar farms and more solar use. I have solar panels. My house is heated by solar. So that there's some work that needs to be done around ordinances. I'd love to see an EV charging ordinance come up so we can do something with planning. And I keep saying to certain members of the planning board, I'm not looking at you, Nick, but just saying, bring me an ordinance. We'd love to consider it. But yeah, I definitely feel that we need to bring forward or become more active with an action plan. And I'd be interested in finding out a little bit more about what Jonathan mentioned, which is what Portland and South Portland have going also. So anyway, we have been doing things about it, but maybe we aren't as loud about it as we need to be. And we do need to get more active. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean Marie Caterina. And, you know, we have seen a few more solar projects over there at the Hospice of Southern Maine has one now. And then over on Payne Road, the hot tub shop whose name evades me, they've brought it in. What time are we at? We're at 8:20. We've got another 30 minutes of questions and then 10 minutes to allow you all to make a closing statement. I will let you know that your questions can be submitted to sccquestions@gmail.com. Here's a question that came in from our audience. What is and this would go to Nick McGee to start off. Nick, what is the biggest challenge that we will face in the next year, and how would you contribute to solving it?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely growth and development. I mean, it just impacts so many aspects of the community, whether it's the school systems, whether it's our tax base, whether it's our budgets. It can be a strain on current public services. So if you model, I was fortunate enough to have a quick conversation with the chief the other day. The more growth you have, the more the demands become on the departments that service our community. So, you know, not only are you looking forward and saying, okay, here's where we're headed, here's our challenge. How are we going to make it better, or how are we going to be able to deal with it? And that's going to take efforts. One, it's making sure that our vision for this community through the comprehensive plan is in place. It's two, making sure that our growth management ordinance really reflects what it is that we want to accomplish here in town. Again, I don't want to get too far into the details on that, but we do allow fractional permitting of units, and this can sometimes skew how many units we're actually allowing to be built in town versus what's in the growth pool. We also end up, we have a reserve pool that's set aside for specific types of projects that can go ahead and grab from that. So, I think we need a more focused and upfront view and approach to how we continue growth in this town and how we manage it. On the budgeting side, how do we partner one with all the members of our community? So you have to, when you take into consideration all of the needs that are going to come forward, and there's always more needs, and you always wish you could do more. You have to keep in the back of your mind that there are people in this community that we don't want to push out the door. And so how do we also make sure we don't do that as we plan for the future? I think we should be looking at long-term planning funding, because I think like this pandemic, such as COVID, they're not necessarily going to go away, not forever. If this ends, fine, that's great. But when's the next one come? And are we prepared to weather that storm? And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned what we're going through. Yeah, you wish you had more than 2 minutes on some days. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Nick McGee. Freyla Tarpinian, what is the biggest challenge in the next year, and how would you contribute to solving it?
The biggest challenge in the next year is going to be dealing with COVID. I think it's first and foremost dealing with keeping people safe and healthy. I think in Maine we have a good reputation across, nationally of having dealt with it better than others. But we still have COVID in our communities all around us, and it looks like it's continuing to spread as every single day I hear about a new school going into quarantine. And then once we get past the initial, the town council isn't going to get COVID under control. That's left to the, professionals in Augusta and at the CDC. But once we do that, how do we take care of people who are dealing with the collateral consequences of COVID? And by that, I mean the unemployment that it's wrought, the drastic reduction in revenue that it's wrought to our budget, to the state budget, but also to the county budget. And to deal with the changes, it's changing demographics in a way that's much more quickly than people anticipated pre-COVID. If a year ago you told me that I would be able to work from home once or twice a week, I would have laughed at you, because it was inconceivable for me that I would be permitted or even would be able to function working from home. And yet not only have I adapted, but so many others have adapted. A lot of, I'm fortunate that I continue to be employed, but there are a lot of our neighbors who are not. I know so many people who are been furloughed or let go, or jobs have been eliminated and may never come back. And that uncertainty and that anxiety is just heart-wrenching. I can't imagine what my family would go through if I or my spouse lost our job. It would be devastating to us. And so I think as a council, we need to react respectfully. I think the council has done a great job in keeping people safe and reacting very quickly and appropriately when COVID emerged. But I think that there's still work to be done, and there's going to be ongoing unanticipated things popping up having to do with COVID as we go. The school is the most obvious example of that, but it's going to reach across that. Thanks.
Thank you, Freyla Tarpini. And Jonathan Anderson, what is the biggest challenge in the next year, and how will you contribute to solving it?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Freyla said, that the immediate charge is to help the community navigate through COVID. I'd really like to see us form a joint committee of the schools, the town, businesses, and residents to really try and understand as things come out, as things evolve, as we learn more, what are the solutions that are needed. I worked at work on how we deal with COVID in the workplace based on people needing to take time off and spend time with their kids. Myself having a kindergartner and a second grader, it's been quite a challenge, and we're still kind of working through it. But I anticipate at some point people in the community are going to kind of identify things that work, and we want to make sure we're sharing those best practices that we can help everybody. So COVID in my mind is the top thing that we need to focus on. Also with businesses, like Freyla mentioned, I think we're at 8.7% unemployment, and it's mostly in the hospitality industry. On the last school board, we talked about, a shortage of substitute teachers, and I know there's challenges there, but with an 8.7% unemployment, there's got to be things we can do to help find these people jobs locally. But I do think Nick brings up a good point too, as well, about also thinking long-term. I don't think we can take our sights off of the future and making sure that we're planning financially and looking long-term and developing a long-term plan. I think we have to do both while we deal with COVID, because we don't want to get out of COVID and then be stuck dealing with a situation where we have a library that needs to be expanded, consolidated schools that might be on the ballot, changing traffic or updating traffic. So we've got a lot we need to deal with. And I think while COVID is the priority in the short term, we need to be also thinking long-term.
Thank you, Jonathan Anderson. Jean Marie Caterina, what is the biggest challenge that we'll face in the next year, and how would you contribute to solving it?
Well, I wrote on my little notepad here, COVID-19. That is absolutely the biggest challenge for all of the reasons that my fellow speakers mentioned. To me, though, I'm going to go right to the effect of the economy and on funding and financing. People forget that towns are at the bottom of the funnel when it comes to money. The feds are at the top. They're the only ones that can print money and increase, money and budgets. And regretfully, we're in a deficit right now, for whether you believe that's right or wrong. The state is in not a very good position. There was an article in today's paper that I pulled that was just talking about, hopefully we won't go into a recession, because if we do, we're all, I hate to use the term dead ducks, but it's going to be tough. Luckily, we've got a cushion with state revenues, and towns. We are, by state law, the only income we have in towns is property tax, plus whatever revenue sharing or whatever the state's willing to do. And I don't want to see us be negatively impacted with property taxes. What will I do? I'm on the Legislative Policy Committee for Maine Municipal. I do a lot of lobbying of legislators in the governor's office. We're going to, and including our reps in Congress and the Senate, and we're just going to keep the pressure on that we need help. We need help. So that's what I'm going to do.
Thank you, Jean Marie. And finally, John Clucci, what's the biggest challenge in the next year, and how would you contribute to solving it?
Yeah, I agree with everybody. I think it's clearly COVID. But there's a number of prongs to it that I think are important to touch on. Earlier this year, we passed or we took action to allow some greater flexibility for our retail and restaurant businesses to adapt to COVID and do additional outdoor seating, and had a streamlined planning board process while winter's coming. And it's going to be difficult for some of these businesses to survive. So we're going to need to be ready to take action again to help them. Student learning is another one. We're doing a great job trying to learn or find our way to ensure that our students are able to get the education that we all expect. But that's a big challenge, and it's not something that could happen overnight. So that's going to continue into the next year as well. We need to do more to take care of our vulnerable population. I think town staff did a fantastic job this year of reaching out to somebody who might not have somebody else to lean on during this time. And they, I think, had a list of some 800 residents that they were following up on a somewhat regular basis. And I thought that was a fantastic program. We're going to need to continue that and maybe formalize it a little. But the other effect, I think, ties into what Nick McGee was talking about is this is a massive change that's happening all of a sudden. And one of the effects that I perceive, and I think it's starting to play out, is making Scarborough even more popular. Okay, if you live in a dense city right now, Maine is safe and you can now work remotely, work from home. I think it's driving our property values up at a remarkable rate. And that's a really difficult problem to figure out, because we want to be able to, people to be able to stay in their homes. We want to welcome new folks to Scarborough as well, as long as it's done in a managed way. And I think that's where we can kind of tie into the growth management ordinance and the comprehensive plan. Those are all things that are related to our COVID response in my eyes.
Thank you, John Clucci. We've got 5 candidates running for 3 available seats on the Scarborough Town Council. Jean Marie Caterina and John Clucci are seeking a return for another term. There's also the seat of Peter Hayes, who served multiple terms, and he is not running for re-election. But of the 5 that we have here on the screen, 3 will serve on our town council. If there are any questions, sccc questions@gmail.com. Let's stay with the economy for right now. As a town councilor, Freyla Tarpinian, how will you and the council help our town's small businesses and our economy to bounce back from the toll that has taken place this year?
I think that is the $1 million question, isn't it? What is the toll going to be, and how can we as a town council move to support businesses? Obviously, a lot of our small businesses especially, but also our large businesses are suffering. I hear about closures all the time. I heard about another one just yesterday. And it's heart-wrenching to see people's livelihoods and what they've poured their blood, sweat, and tears into disappear because of a virus, an unpredictable and completely out of the blue event that changed everybody's life radically. So what can the town council do in order to stimulate the economy? I think what it did is it really works in partnership with SEDCO and the chamber, right, to create economic initiatives to drive businesses. And we usually think about attracting businesses to town, but what do we do for businesses that are suffering? And that's where you have to get creative. I think we're kind of stuck because our legislators were not able to go back into session, and there was a lot of money on the table left in Augusta through the CARES Act that we could have taken advantage of to really support our small businesses. I would really like to see if there's a way forward with that. If there is money available from whatever source, there was a tremendous bill passed. There was not a second bill through the federal government, but we should access any of those funds that we can that are available. There are grant opportunities that are available right now. I think SEDCO is managing some of those opportunities, as well as other private partnerships. And we need to make sure that we continue to make those opportunities available so that people get the help they need right now before it's too late. Because once the doors are closed, it's too late. Thanks.
Thank you, Freyla Tarpinian. Jonathan Anderson, how will you as a town councilor and with the council help small business and our economy bounce back from the toll of COVID-19?
I think it goes back to a little bit what Jean Marie said. So COVID is a national pandemic and it requires a national response. And so we need to be working with our national legislators and the ones in Augusta to really make sure they keep developing new programs to release funds that we can take advantage of. I think SEDCO has done a phenomenal job up to this point. I've talked with Karen, and just hearing all the things she's been doing, all the creative, innovative things she's come up with to try and help small businesses is fantastic. And I'm interested to work with her more closely and figure out what else we can do. In conversations with her, when we talked about, the industries that are most impacted, it really does, again, go back to the hospitality industry. So what can we do, especially in Maine or in Scarborough, to really make sure our hospitality industry stays working? We could continue to try and create ways to support local businesses, buy local, shop local, eat out local, try and do as much as we can to flood the extra discretionary spend that we all have right now because we're not going out as much as we used to. I think, something to look into is a potential rent abatement program with restaurants and other hospitality related industries to see if there's a way we can help them work with the local landlords to see if we can get some sort of rent abatement just for a short period of time to really make sure that these businesses are able to stay put while they avoid paying those high rent costs. So I think those are a couple of things we could do, but it's really going to start with going back to the federal government and the state government. I know Karen's working closely to try and get more grant money for the businesses and coach them to apply for those grants to stay open. So hopefully that will help. Thank you.
Thank you, John Anderson. Jean Marie Caterina, how will you as a town councilor work with the council to help small business and our economy bounce back from the toll taken from COVID-19?
I will continue the work that we've started with the council. Again, SEDCO and the chamber have been fabulous in working with us, helping us brainstorm ideas. One thing that we did, for example, was allow what I call spillover of restaurants or retail into parking lots or adjacent lots, which is not allowed by our ordinance, but we lifted that and it's going to be back up. Hopefully we're going to lift it again October 15th as just a creative way to help folks. Takeout restaurants is big. I know we're going to be working on a proposal that's coming up to allow drive-through eating restaurants, whatever, on Haggis Parkway that's coming through Long Range Planning Committee, of which I'm a member. But again, I like some of the ideas, but we need money. And we can't be putting the burden on the property tax folks. We just can't do that. So we need help from the state, we need help from the feds, and we need to continue to lobby and work towards that. So I will continue to do what I've been doing, and I will be helping SEDCO and Chamber in their efforts also. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean Marie Caterina. John Clucci, I think of that meeting that we had at the Dunstan Tap and Table on March 12th after President Trump had given his speech, and just the look on people that day, all small businesses, all local here in town. How can we help how can you help as a town councilor and the town council as a whole to support the small businesses that were hurt so hard?
Yeah, I'm a small business owner. I own a motel, so I think I understand pretty clearly what some folks are going through and what I've been going through. It's been a remarkable 6 months. And I think the biggest thing as a council that we can do is to help folks evolve their businesses. And we can do that by listening to what they need and what they perceive as barriers. And sometimes we can do things to help remove some of those barriers. Sometimes those barriers were put up for a completely different situation. And I think we did that with restaurants and retail. I think that was positive. There's going to be a lot of churn. I think there's really no stopping that. But I think we've got a lot of really creative folks in town running these businesses, and I think they're going to find a way. And I think we have a lot of strong local support in Scarborough as well, which is going to bode well. But I think the biggest thing that we can do, and we're lucky we're already set up for this in Scarborough with SEDCO and Karen Martin, is that we can help point them to resources that can help them to either find support mechanisms or peer groups or somebody else that can help them kind of work through their specific problems. A lot of other communities don't have that. But, you know, as a counselor, I'm going to be here to listen and to help them survive.
Thank you, John Clucci. Nick McGee, how will you as a town councilor and working with the council help small businesses and our economy bounce back from the toll COVID-19 has taken?
Yeah, I think that the first thing you need to be able to do is show some flexibility. And that's where you rely on partners such as SEDCO and the Chamber of Commerce that, one, help the businesses right out of the gate, figure out where they can assistance and help try to save their businesses. After that, we really rely on them for the feedback, either directly from a business owner or from these, from SEDCO or from the chamber, to come to, a council and just say, hey, this is what we think we could need. And I'll give you a good example. I mean, I think the expansion, we relaxed rules about the outside seating for a lot of the restaurants. So, because of the space restrictions, they needed somewhere else to space these tables up. So we tried to at least, and I credit the council for and the town staff for coming up with a very flexible plan on allowing dining options in areas you never thought we had to before, and in parking lots, and choose up parking spaces. But we were doing what we could. I also it is important about the business, but I also want to don't lose sight of the working parent. I think is the other portion of this, which is how are we helping a working parent get to work and sustain themselves? It is important that these businesses stay open and have those jobs, but what are we doing for the parents as well? And I think, again, the council took a good couple initial steps here for the childcare, the additional childcare, because that's important. Being able to show up at your job and earn that paycheck to put food on your table is incredibly important to so many, and they needed that flexibility. So I think just be willing to listen. I think all the good options. Don't be afraid to try something, and if it fails, try again. So that's it.
Thank you, Nick. We've really been dealing with some extremely serious and really, quite frankly, depressing topics here, because we are in just unbelievable times. So I want to just change it up a little bit before we go into our closing statements, which will be at 8:50. So John Anderson, what makes you most proud of Scarborough and your being a member of our community?
So I think what I'm most proud about is really the diversity of this community. I think, the charm we have of the neighborhoods is fantastic, but also because we're at that point where we still have a lot of old Scarborough and new Scarborough, it's really exciting to see what we can all do if we come together on that shared vision and where we want to be in the next 10 years. I think it's great that I can walk down the street, down Maple Ave, and find somebody who's been living in Scarborough for 88 years. And it's great that I can go next door and find somebody who just moved in from Boston or somewhere else in the world. So I think it's our diversity that makes us great and makes me excited to be here. And it's really something I want to help make sure we maintain going forward. I want to make sure the people who have been here, the people who've contributed to the community, the people who are now on fixed income and concerned about taxes, that they can stay. And I also want to make sure that those of us like myself who came here and are excited about new amenities and the growth and all the great things that come with that also become available. So I'm really excited to figure out how we kind of bring all these viewpoints together and really make sure we create an even better Scarborough.
Jean Marie Caterina, what makes you proud to be a part of Scarborough and its future?
Well, I grew up next door in South Portland, and we used to think Scarborough was like, ooh, who wanted to live in Scarborough when I was a kid? Because there was nothing here. I moved into my grandparents' house on 311 Gorham about Albert and Abby Libby back in 1988. And I've seen huge changes in Scarborough, and I think they're all fabulous. The school system it's amazing what we've managed to put together for such an awesome, strong education opportunities for kids in this town. I've also been very proud of the work we've done on the council to support senior citizens. I know this year I pushed really hard for us to increase the senior tax rebate from $600 to $750, where seniors actually get a check back after the end of the year if they meet certain income criteria. And it's a very easy lift to qualify for that. It's amazing how many people need that. So I'm really proud of what we've done with that. I love how we've maintained a lot of conservation areas, our beaches, our natural sites, the partnerships we've been doing, municipal partnerships with other towns like Dispatch with Old Orchard as an example, or our public safety building. I know some people are kind of mad about it right now, but you know, we put that out to the town, and it's a beautiful facility. I think we did a great job with it, and it will serve us well in the future. So I see us as a very vibrant, growing, and I know Nick doesn't particularly like that word, but we're a growing town. And we will work very hard to make sure we maintain its rural character also. That's not an easy lift, but I think we'll do it.
Thank you, Jean Marie Caterina. John Clucci, what makes you most proud of Scarborough?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to focus on just one thing. There's so much to love about Scarborough, right? There's a lot of diversity in terms of, we have dense area developments, we have rural, we have coastline. We've got, I think the municipal campus is just gorgeous, and the public safety building adds to it. I think the revitalization of the Oak Hill area, and particularly around Bessie Commons, what came after that development was approved, the work of the land trust. But if I had to pick one thing that I think I'm most proud of, it's the people who work here, and particularly for the town and for the school department. I think that's where I've had probably more touch points than anything else. And they're just really good people. They go above and beyond really consistently with most people that I've had contact with. They're pleasant, they're balanced. So I'll fall back on the people who work here is probably where I'm most proud.
Thank you, John Clucci. Nick McGee, what makes you most proud of living here in Scarborough and getting to serve Scarborough?
I'm so happy you asked this question, because when we get into politics and you talk to people, it's all about doom and gloom, and that's not what this place is about. It's not what it represents to me. I love Scarborough, and what makes Scarborough the best is the people here. Hands down. I know of a parent that has a spreadsheet based on where her kids need to be on what day and who's driving them where. And that's the mean community. It's pulling on different people from your neighbors, your friendships, your social groups. This place would be incredibly boring without the people that we have around us. So you can have the most and the prettiest trees, but if there's no one to share it with and help, this community is all about what we're giving to our children as well. What are they inheriting? What are they seeing? How do we treat each other? At our community is, as much as I cringe at how much growth is going on, there's incredible positive opportunities in the downs. I think we should be excited to have maybe a downtown area that we can actually help shape and mold and be part of that discussion with the developers. I think that's a wonderful opportunity. So we have so much going for us here. I would continue to try to bring a positive message to this town, as much as I may sound like I'm harping on one issue or another. It's really not the case. It's actually not even my personality. I am very happy-go-lucky. I love this place. I love the people that I'm around. I have made lifelong friends. My kids will never forget this place. So they'll probably, they're already making offers on our house and asking us when we're going to leave. So it's a beautiful place, and we can't say enough about it.
Thank you, Nick McGee. Freyla Tarpinian, what makes you most proud of being in Scarborough and serving potentially in Scarborough?
Well, I was waiting my whole life to get here. When we decided where we were going to raise our kids, we were looking for the best of Maine, and that's what we found here in Scarborough. It's really the best of Maine. From the amenities, I can be, at a coffee shop in 10 minutes, or I can be on a rail trail in 10 minutes. I can be at a beach in a couple of seconds, or I could be paddling through the marsh in just a few minutes. And it's all right here, and I live here, and I'm so, so proud to do that. The natural environment is unbeatable. I think the beach is my special place when I need some time to think about things. That is where I go. My father always taught me that, and that's what I've always gone when I needed to work through a problem and just needed a couple minutes to myself. And finally, the people from the schools, which are phenomenal, and I cannot wait till my girls get a chance to take full advantage of them because they're quite young and haven't had an opportunity to do that. To the retirement communities, we really do have everybody here. It's not just a one type of community, but my children will have access to a whole bunch of people. I think the day I moved in, I got visited by a couple different groups of people. One group was retired and they brought me a handmade bag, and I was so touched because I'd never moved to a place where somebody would come and bring me something to welcome me to the neighborhood. That was really special to me. And then not 10 minutes later, on the day that I was unpacking, in a tank top and shorts, sweating like the Dickens because it was the middle of the summer, hauling boxes upstairs and chasing around two little ones, I had my neighbors pop by with some a Pakistani rice dish that was just amazing. And just to be welcome to that neighborhood and to live in a place where I can let my children walk outside, even though that they are young, and not worry about them, makes me so happy and so proud to be here.
Thank you, Freyla Tarpinian. We're going to get ready for the closing statements. You'll each get 2 minutes. I'll start with Jean Marie, but at first I wanted to say thank you to everyone who helped put this together. Nancy Kroll from the Scarborough Public Library as helping me along the way. Art Dillon, Dennis Meehan with the Scarborough Community Chamber. Portland Sea Dogs were represented here tonight, and they're a big part of our community. Karen Martin behind the scenes running this Zoom meeting for us. And also everyone at Town Hall, including Don Bajan's office, Tristan Snyder, who just helped behind the scenes. This was, and of course, how could I not say Tody Justice, who's helping to put on this election for us, which is going to be starting right off. Tody was right there letting me know who had submitted, and we started the planning for this year's program. There's a lot of stuff we didn't touch. We didn't touch capital spending projects. We didn't touch when we're going to get Nancy a new library or an expanded one, or the primary school, or the community center. We didn't really touch on credit enhancement agreements. We did mention the Downs, right? I think it was Nick who mentioned it, and we went that whole time. And we did not talk about the impending credit enhancement agreement under consideration for Jocelyn Place. We didn't spend enough time to talk about affordable housing or senior housing, and we didn't talk about taxes and the budget. And you'll be talking about that if you're successful. So with that, thank you very much for coming. But let's go with Jean Marie Caterina with her closing statement.
Thank you so much, Kevin. You do an awesome job running these. I want to thank you because you make it very entertaining and have throughout the years. Thanks also to the Chamber and everyone else for presenting this. And thank you to the citizens of Scarborough who have elected me not once, but twice to represent them. And I hope they will choose to elect me for a third time. I feel very strongly that in the next 3 years, we're going to have some very fluid situations, particularly in the next year, that's going to require the experience that I bring to the table in working in municipal government at this level, as well as just my background and as small business owner myself. We own 4 small businesses, my husband and I. I'm a former teacher, social work. I used to be the Assistant Commissioner of Labor for the state of Maine. So I've worked in all sorts of levels of the private and state and local jobs. I don't have any specific axes to grind or reasons why I'm running other than I love to do it. I like to put in the time. I like to be able to make change, positive change for folks. Sometimes it's not pretty. Making sausage is one of the terms they use in politics. But I feel very strongly that every single council I've worked on, we've worked together really well. Sometimes it doesn't look like that from the outside, but we have. So I would really appreciate your vote coming right up. We have had over 6,000 absentee ballot requests. There will be a nice safe place to put your ballots into if you don't want to come into town hall. You can start voting in town hall October 5th. And of course, election day is Tuesday, November 3rd. And I have to go because Nancy's telling me to be quiet. Thank you, Nancy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jean Marie Caterina. John Clucci.
Yeah, thanks again for doing this, Kevin. It's you know, a real service, I think, to the community, and you don't get any accolades for it or nearly enough. And thank you to everybody who's watching now or will watch it in the future. I think it's important to be engaged with your local government. We enjoy hearing from you. It's important that you talk to us and tell us your concerns and thoughts. And I hope I hope that you'll feel free to reach out and ask some of those questions that we weren't able to get through tonight. You know, from my perspective, Scarborough's future is bright. And I want to be a part of continuing to shape and mold what that future looks like. I think we're positioned well. And some of the things that, you know, you might find as a negative, like we don't get much funding from the state for schools or for a number of things. Well, when we're in a situation when state funding is going down, that's actually a positive or a benefit because we're not going to be hurt as bad as some other communities. So when I look at what we have, the attributes, what make up Scarborough, I think we're going to continue to be a desirable place to be, both for the residents who live here and the folks that want to be here. And that's leverage. That allows you to you know, think about the future, and it gives you some discretion with, you can help to create the path for what you want Scarborough to look like tomorrow. So it's been an awesome year and 3 months on the council. I started in the council, I had a lot of free time. You know, business was booming, and I had people to do a lot of the things that that needed to take place operationally. You know, my life has changed in the past 6 months. That's no longer the case. I am, you know, 7 in the morning till 1, 2 o'clock, you know, going with my business. But I think if you look the past couple of months, I've kept up with all the council work. I've continued to do deep and thorough analysis for all the issues that have come before us. And I think I can play a good role in next year's council. I think I'm different enough than a lot of the other councilors. I'm a little more analytic. I get along well with all of them. And I think I've shown I'll would be honored to work with whoever gets elected this session as well. So thank you for having me and for hosting it, and look forward to the opportunity.
Thank you, John Clucci. Nick McGee, your closing statement.
Yes, yeah, and I'll just echo. I think this was a great event, and I really appreciate the time. And I get that sneak peek, see who's back there with Karen Martin, and you know, just the audiovisual team at Town Hall. I know how much they've gone through. So just a great appreciation for how much everyone puts into this. We've all gone above and beyond. We should be proud of the efforts we're making. I think where you know, I really can contribute to this town and this community is taking my experience and putting it to work. So as we all know, the devil's in the details, and we come out with these vision statements and these ordinances and these plans, and we think they're great. We think we covered this, and then all of a sudden we start implementing them. You start to see where it may or may not have gone wrong on you. And I think that's where I hopefully can contribute to that part of the conversation. I do have a couple of, and I know, Kevin, you just touched on a bunch of them, but there are a couple of bullet points that I would personally say that you could probably count on me for, which is I do want to limit high density growth and development within the town, because we need to be responsible and make sure we're planning. I want to rework the growth management ordinance to accurately reflect how many building permits and units we're allowing into the town, which of course impacts our traffic, our transit, all of the public safety, the schools. So I support saving our community schools. I think that idea needs to be vetted further, and I don't want to swim out of my lane, but I think we do need an active voice for keeping community schools. For some of these members of our community, that's their first introduction into the community, is that small school system. It's where they meet their first set of parents and their kids have their first set of friends. And it's quaint, it's nice. It's irreplaceable, because once you get into a big school, you don't go back to the voters and ask for 3 more small ones. Oops, we made a mistake. So I want to see that idea vetted a little bit more thoroughly, because I think you can probably It's unfortunate. I've got some ideas on my website. Please visit it, nickmcgee.com.
Thank you, Nick. Freyla Tarpinian, your closing statement.
Thank you, and thank you to Kevin and the Chamber for putting this together. So back in the spring, when I talked to Ella about who represented her, I talked about the importance of having people serve on the town council with integrity, motivated to create lasting and positive changes, and committed to working with others to make Scarborough better. And I'm running as an independent thinker, not on behalf of a small group and not with specialized interests in mind. As I said before, when our council is debating issues that directly relate to young children and their parents, we need to make sure that they are represented at the table where those decisions are made. I'm running to be an advocate for Scarborough schools, for the economic development, and to keep Scarborough affordable for everyone who lives here. I also want to make sure that we make decisions today that will pay dividends tomorrow, which includes growing wisely, planning for our changing environment, and adequately funding all of our vital services. As an attorney, I know how to negotiate, collaborate, and work with adverse parties to find common ground moving forward. I bring these skills with me, and I also believe that representatives work best when they listen to the people and they value their input, two values that I would put into practice on your town council. As I told Ella when we read that book about elections, elections do matter. Choosing people who have good judgment and live with integrity matter. Choosing people who want to work for everyone's interests matter. And that's why I'm asking for you to vote for Freyla Tarpinian for town council on November 3rd at the polls, or before if you vote early. Thank you.
Thank you, Freyla Tarpinian. And finally, Jonathan Anderson, your closing statement.
Thanks, Kevin, and thank you guys for putting on such a great event. And thank you to the candidates tonight for coming and participating. So we talked a lot today about COVID recovery, and I think that's clearly a priority that we have to focus on, and it's one of mine. I also think we need to focus on growth and make sure that we're doing it in a smart way so that we can make sure everybody can continue to live here comfortably. We do have a lot of investment decisions that we need to make as a town going forward that Kevin referred to: the consolidated schools, the library expansion, a potential community center. And I think we really have to look at how do we create a financial plan that creates financial sustainability where we don't necessarily have to rely on significant property tax increases or increasing our town debt. I don't want to have so much debt in this town that it's my kids who have to live here and pay for it. I want to make sure we find other more creative ways to finance our investments to really make sure we can do everything we want to do. We just might not be able to do it all tomorrow. I think it's important that we prioritize our education and what we do decide as a community, because education is probably the best measure of a community's success, and we need to make sure we continue to invest and support our schools. And lastly, I want to make sure we set an example for Scarborough, potentially as a beacon for the state or even the nation, as a community that can engage in civil discourse in a very respectful and professional way. We have so many people around here with such great ideas, not always seeing eye to eye, but I think we can find common solutions that we can work towards. And I'd be happy if you elected me and I could work with you to help find what those solutions might be for Scarborough. If you're interested, you can check out my website at johnandersonforscarborough.com if you want to learn more, or look me up on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan Anderson. And thank all five of you for joining us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 of these 5 candidates will become town councilors. Make sure you get out and vote. And while you do, please be safe. I wish you all well, and thank you for joining us for Candidates Night 2020. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.